To throw it. And intercepted. Daxton Hill. Uyunglele. Touchdown, Ross. They go with a run at 33, and that's blown up right at the point. John Ridgway. Four-man front for the Dogs, drifting back in coverage. There comes the pressure. Way Walker. Shot out of a cannon.
Bennett. Near side. Pass is caught. George Pickens.
Gary lost a yard in his first one. They bank it to him, and smothering the quarterback is Tyreek
Smith. Welcome to a fresh episode of Draft on Tap. I'm Aldo Gandia, and the draft is 19 days, 22 hours, and 54 minutes away. This is a live look at a countdown as to when round one will begin. So if you're looking live, that's how much time you have to wait. Of course, the best way to wait is to wait along with Danny Shimon and Neil Stopchinski. Guys, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. I mean, this is like, for me, is like Christmas. You know, it's coming down. I'm a countdown to Christmas. I'm counting all my gifts under this Christmas tree. How many are mine? How are my sisters? How many could be for? Could be a surprise for both. You know, so this is what this clock here tells me, man. Because this is when the draft comes around, that's my day. I tell everybody, don't call me, don't text me. I am in the draft zone, and I am breaking down players. So that's my.
What about you, Neil? Is this like Christmas for you?
No, absolutely. You know, it's kind of like the beginning of December, right? You know, you're kind of wondering what's going to show up under the tree. I'm not even looking at the wrap gifts yet. It's not even that close to that time yet. I mean, I'm just sort of guessing what could possibly be on the tree for me. But I'll tell you what, though, like every time Ryan Poles goes and makes a move, it completely reshapes, you know, where I think this, you know, this franchise might be going with pick 32 and then, you know, pick 41 and pick 7, you know, all throughout day two, it just sort of reformulates where I think they might be going with their options. So it's been a lot of fun watching them make the moves that they've made. And we saw, of course, the past 24 hours, 2 fresh moves, and I'm over here thinking again.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's talk about these guys, these 2 new signings today on Friday. What is it? April 8th. Starting with the slot cornerback, what's his name? Tavon Young. You guys, I know him. He's been around the league for a while, and Greg Gabriel loves the fact that he can step in and be the starting slot corner. He tweeted out today. What are your thoughts on that? I'll start with you, Neil.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that we were desperately in need of was a guy that could play the nickel. So that's a very welcome addition. He was a very high-end performer for a very good defensive outfit over there in Baltimore. Welcome to Chicago, because now I think it puts a lot less stress on our need for the cornerback room than what we had just a week ago when we were talking about this position. So it looks to me like, we might have an option. I'm not sure what the terms and length of that contract is. And I think they'll give you a lot more insight into even more what the plans are. It was a 1-year deal. Okay. Yeah. Well, it looks like we're still going to be hitting the cornerback, position on day 2. So
Totally agree.
Yeah, but think about it is again, like I said last week, it looks like Thomas Graham is going to be, corner number 2, or at least I think Thomas Graham can be corner number 2. Obviously, once these guys get them into minicamp and everything else, they'll make those decisions. And the next couple of weeks are absolutely critical with that. Thankfully they had the virtue of being able to start their offseason training, a couple of weeks earlier, given the new head coach signing. So we'll see what happens over the next couple of weeks. And if anything comes out of Hallis Hall, if anything comes out of Lake Forest, that could kind of tip us off as to where we could go with those 3 picks on day 2, as it pertains to corner.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Mr. Shimon, about Tavon Young?
Yeah, Young is a tough little cornerback. He played slot corner for the Ravens, and he of course came out of Temple. Those guys typically are tough. Tough-minded, physical and mentally tough players. So, his issue. I mean, when he's on the field, he's an effective slot corner. His problems is staying on the field. And he's had 2 ACL injuries. So those are something that you have to be concerned about. I believe he runs about if I remember mistaken, I think he's like 5'9", 5'10", something like that. You know, not the bigger tall, you know, bigger build player, but definitely a guy that when, like I said, when he's on the field, when he's healthy, he is productive, and that's the key here. So I think he has the leg up on the inside slot corner position. You know, if they don't attack it here in the draft, but you know, I agree with Neil and some of the guys in the chat room here saying as well that we still got to attack this position, you know, via the draft. You know, I think it was those 3 picks in the top, you know, 71 right now. I think one will be a cornerback, probably most likely an outside cornerback, a guy that can man the outs, you know, the position, or at least challenge for that spot opposite of Jalen Johnson is what I feel they're going to do with one of those 2 second-round picks, possibly maybe even that third-round pick. Not even sure. So see how that board falls to them. But yeah, definitely, I think offensive line still a need. Obviously, I think you know, receiver is a need, and I think corner. I think those right now are three needs. So the other signing they made was Ryan Griffin, a backup tight end.
Don't go too fast here. Danny likes to cover the entire segment in one blast there. Let's stay with Tavon Young a little bit. These are his 2021 stats: 1 interception, 35 tackles, 2 sacks, and 4 tackles for a loss last season. Like you mentioned, he does have an injury issue. He typically plays about 50 to 60% of the snaps for a team. Last year it was under 50. So the question that there is durability. Is this towards the end of his career? And if it is so, then this is a value signing, because there's a lot of incentives in that contract. If he plays a certain amount of games, if he gets to the playoffs and all that stuff, then, you know, he will get compensated more. So this is another one of those Ryan polls. You know, I put up on Twitter today, DVD bargain bin. You know, you ever go to buy DVDs and there's a bunch of DVDs in a big bin and they're all $5. Well, he pulled out Tavon Young, and hopefully, you know, he'll have a comeback season and improve himself, still capable of starting 67% of the snaps on a team, particularly given that Eberflus said we're going to be playing nickel defense 80% of the time, guys.
Yep, exactly. Right. Exactly. That's why it was very important to get. Another thing was, like, you see his stats there, and with the thing with when you're a slot corner, basically the closer you are to the line of scrimmage, the tougher you have to be, right? And plus in terms of the wear and tear on your frame, on your body, you know, because obviously you're close to all the action, so you know you have to be tough, which Tavon Young is. And the other thing is the other question now we're talking about is durability, right? Will he be able to stay on the field as much as we need him for, especially with those kind of percentages in terms of what Eberflus said, in terms of 85% of the time they're going to be in the nickel package. So that's why that tells me that 5th or 4th, you know, DB is going to be very, very, or 5th DB, I should say, very, very important for this team.
Mm-hmm. All right, Danny, I'll stay right with you. And why don't you talk a little bit about Ryan Griffin, the veteran tight end that was picked up today?
Yeah, it's a 1-year deal. Another one of those bargain bin DVDs like you were talking about. Although, you know, it's a backup tight end. This is more of a flank, you know, kind of a joker position guy that you can spread out in the slot. You know, we talked about your favorite guy, Jasper Horsted. So this is maybe something more similar into that types of a player, not an inline Y tight end, blocking tight end. So that, you know, they might attack that later on in veteran free agency. You could probably bring up a guy, or maybe even use an extra offensive lineman. Who knows? But you know, just a guy gives you nice value. Not a big time, you know, player in my opinion. Just a guy that's got a nice solid backup. Got to probably run there. I mean, Jesse James is still part of the roster, if I'm not mistaken. So I think, you know, him, and with Cole Kmet, and then now you have Griffin, and then obviously, you know, Jasper Horsted. I think those guys are going to give you, you know, some of the bulk of the time at tight end. The other thing is just you need another inline tight end, another blocker, especially if you're going to go to a 2 tight end set. Now, Jesse James, you know, he's not known for his blocking, but I thought last year, just watching him play, I think when he was on the field, again, a guy who dealt with some injuries, when he was on the field, he was effective. And now he's not a devastating inline blocker, but again, I've always said that when you're blocking, especially if you're a guy that's not great at it, as long as you get in between, keep your body in between the defender and your offensive player, I think you know you're effective. So if Jesse James can do that, he could be another guy that could be a staple in terms of that 2 tight end set.
By the way, Neil, before you talk about Griffin, Nomad in the chat room wants you to take down that Lou Holtz picture.
Do what now?
Take down that Lou Holtz picture.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You take that back. The greatest man ever walked the face
That's
of the planet.
between you and Nomad. I'm staying out of that. I just like to instigate. Anyway, what are your thoughts on this tight end? Been around a while.
Yeah, and I think if you look at what he's done over the course of his career, I mean, he doesn't have a lot of production, but when he has been on the field, he's been efficient, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, in terms of balls caught, yardage gained, touchdown scored, in a very limited opportunity. So that right away tells you that, you know, that the kid at least is about the right things. He works hard, and you know, he's going to bring a lot of experience and leadership into that locker room. But yeah, I mean, you know, we got a little bit of depth, and again, you know, you can't ever have too much depth. Especially at a position to where you don't only need guys to fill in at a high contact position, but also for special teams. You know, I can imagine this guy's going to play a lot of you know, field goal block and you know, PAT and everything else. So you know, quality signing, and that's all that Poles has done this offseason so far is just nothing but quality signings. You know, made a, you know, half a splash here, half a splash there, try to make a big splash with the inside D lineman. That didn't work out. You know, hopefully he can figure out a way to, you know, pull him back in. But, you know, think about it is, you know, Poles is doing with what he can in terms of the resources that he was left, which is very little. So, you know, give him credit.
What do you guys think? Ravi asks about Cole Kmet. Do you think that Cole Kmet at 22 years old, his future looks bright, or do you have any concerns?
Well, in terms of Cole Kmet, I think the jury's still out on him. I mean, he's still a young player, developing player. I think we saw some more positive play out of him last year, his second year in the league, as opposed to what we saw in his rookie season. But I think just this type of offense, type of system, I think we've seen where they might emphasize tight end more. Now you might say, oh well, wasn't Nagy part of the Chiefs system and where they have Travis Kelce? Yeah, but Nagy was part of the Chiefs system, but he had no idea what he was doing in terms of getting players. He kept a tight end, Jimmy Graham, for $9 million a season on the roster because he was a red zone threat, but he had never played him in the red zone. So I wasn't sure what they were doing, their plan at tight end, but I think Cole Kmet, you saw glimpses of what he can do. Again, he's to me right now the only really the Y inline blocking tight end on this roster. So unless they pick up another guy or off the free agent market here, we'll see what happens. But I think he's a guy just continue to let him just develop and get better. I think him and Justin Fields, I think some positives last year was you saw a little bit of a connection there with him and Justin Fields in a couple of games. It wasn't consistent, wasn't what you wanted to see, but definitely I think for me at least, the jury's still out on Cole Kmet, and I'm not going to say he's a bust or he's not going to be productive moving on forward here.
Mm-hmm. I want to get back to the cornerback area because we're going to talk a lot about corners tonight. You guys have selected several players for us to evaluate, but this is the room as it stands now based on what I just looked at over at the Chicago Bears team roster website. Jalen Johnson, Thomas Graham Jr., Lamar Jackson, not that Lamar Jackson, of course, Michael Joseph, who, by the way, is 30 years old, and he has spent his entire career on the practice team with the Bears. So he's definitely a camp body. Bo Pete Keys, who played at Kansas City and showed some promise. So he might be one of those guys that got their fingers crossed about. Duke Shelley and Kindle Vildor. Overall, what do you guys think about this cornerback room as it stands now, and how badly do we need to still attack it? Neil, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I still think it's a day two pick, again, I talked about it for a couple straight weeks. You got Jalen Johnson, obviously he's your returning stud. Mm-hmm. Thomas Graham, I believe, is your second guy. We just signed our nickel, and then you have Duke Shelley and Kindle Vildor, which are guys that can, fill in spots. Excuse me. And I still don't think we've seen probably the peak of Kindle Vildor, and I'm eager to see what this defensive staff can do once they get their hands on him. But thing is you're talking about a guy that has showed promise here and there, made a splash here and there, really hasn't put anything consistent together, has given us probably more headache than happy times. So, a lot of the jury's still out on most of the guys in that room. Again, Jalen is the returning guy that you feel really good about. Thomas, you're hopeful about. Our new signing, you're, solid, player. And the rest of it is either camp bodies or depth. And, And so I still think you need that fourth guy to come in, a young guy to learn and potentially compete for the second outside spot on day one. And I think we have a good handful of guys that are, in position to potentially do that once they come in the door if we draft them. We're going to talk about today.
Yeah, indeed. Danny, your thoughts on this CB room as it stands?
Well, I think that the NFC North quarterbacks are looking at that CB room and just clicking their chops and getting ready to throw against those guys. Because I mean, if you have a guy named Bo Pete Keys, no disrespect to Bo Pete Keys, but I have never heard of Bo Pete Keys before. So, but although I played well at Kansas City, so we'll see what it does in training camp. But I got guys like Jalen Johnson obviously is the number one corner for right now. I mean, Thomas Graham Jr. Both Neil and I agree that he's a guy that showed some competitiveness, some ability there last year toward tail in this season. I'm still a believer in Kendall Vildor. I think this is a guy that could come in and compete for that nickel position, maybe an opposite or via versus Tavon Young. So we'll see how that goes. But Michael Joseph is the Harvey Unga of defense. So he's a guy that sticks around for years. Unga was that fullback that always made the training camp and somehow stuck around. But Michael Joseph was a guy that I remember coming out. Was a developmental corner. Good size. I believe it was like 6 feet 6'1". Just had some injuries early on in his career, and I think those are kind of set him back. But again, I mean, this is not a room that really can you look at it and say, all right, we've got bodies that we can go and compete with. No, you can't. You're gonna have to add. You're gonna have to add probably via the draft, and I would not stop adding via free agency as well. I mean, the more competitiveness you put in that room, I think that's all. Competition makes everyone else better. So I think besides Jalen Johnson, and you have to bring someone in to compete against him as well, just to kind of keep the fire burning behind his ass as well. So for me, it's obviously a need. I think Neil and I, and although you agree as well, it's going to be one of those key positions they're going to target early on in the draft, unless they do something here that shocks everyone, and which is go get a big corner in terms of free agency. And I think the only one left out there, if I'm not mistaken, is Stephon Gilmore. I don't think he has signed yet. And again, he's an aging veteran, but a guy that's going to command some top dollar. Could that still be in the works? It doesn't look like it. It doesn't appear like it. I've not heard anything about that kind of a signing, but other than that, this is still a priority, and that's why Neil and I really dug into the tape this week in terms of corners, and I think that's something that you guys are going to find interesting here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and we'll get started in just a minute. But I got this breaking news, guys.
Oh God, here we go.
Oh Lord.
Bo Pete Keys made his Bears debut week 15 last year versus the Vikings, playing 5 snaps on special teams as a reserve.
I didn't even notice him out there.
What is that? What the hell is that?
Bo Pete Keys? He's been on the Bears roster since last season.
I've never heard that name until just right now. I swear, I didn't remember even seeing his. What numbers you wear?
0. I don't know, to be honest with you. But let me find out. Hold on a second.
I think Aldo's making up names, man. I think Aldo's just making up names.
Number
throws a curveball here. I'm like, oh yeah, Bo Pete Keys. He's got good length. He's got quick feet, quick twitch. You guys come in and compete. Yeah, right.
Aldo wasn't able to give us any April Fool's garbage, last week because we had a show the day before. So he's making up for it now.
Yeah.
No, he's definitely there. He is. Hold on. He's on the Bears website, as you see it there at the top. Bears, Bo Pete, number 26, experienced 3 years. And then down at the bottom, 2021 season, made his Bears debut week 15 versus the Vikings, playing 5 snaps. He was originally a 7th-round draft pick. You know what? This crazy game of football, that happens sometimes where there are just players that you don't even know that they are on the team. Why is this video up on there? So anyway, it is what it is. Let's get started with the evaluation of cornerbacks. Overall, Neil and Danny, what do you think about the quality of cornerbacks that is a part of the 2022 NFL draft?
Well,
go ahead, Danny.
For me, I mean, just looking at the position right now, I mean, you can, if you want big, tall corners, guys that can bump and press you at the line of scrimmage, you got that here. If you want smaller, diminutive corners, you got that here as well. But the one thing, and I think Neil, I'm not sure, I'm curious to see what your thought is, but I think if you want a quality corner to come in and contribute possibly year 1 or year 2, you're gonna have to get them within the first 3 rounds of this draft. You can't wait until you can get some prospects, guys that are what I call developmental corners or prospects in the day 3 of this draft. But if you want impact guys, potential impact guys, you got to attack them in the first 2 rounds, to be honest with you, because I think typically you see that run on cornerbacks go off off the board in the second round. I think we're going to have possibly about 2 or 3 go in the first round, if not more. And we're going to have a ton of them going in the second round. So I think that's where you're going to have to attack this. And being armed with those 2 second-round picks, that's where I think Ryan Poles kind of maybe kind of foresaw this happening and just said, all right, let me get something because I need someone on offense. I need something on defense. And defense is definitely going to be a cornerback. So definitely attack it on first 2 days of this draft. And then, again, if you eye somebody and on day 3, we got a couple of prospects here we can kind of talk about. Terms of guys that developmental guys have some traits that you like, but just haven't put their game all together yet. But if you bring them in, you coach them up, you could have something there. So, those are the type of guys you get on day 3. But definitely, if you want an impact player, you got to go get it in that second or third round.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing about it is that you got a bunch of guys that are prototypes. You got a bunch of guys with length and height and size and athletic traits, speed and quickness and explosion and all those different types of things. And I think for the most part, and really what we're going to find on day 2 are guys that, you spend a lot of time in the kitchen. You just need the final bit of seasoning on there and they're going to be ready to go. And I think that, again, we got a couple guys we're talking about tonight. They're going to fit that kind of mold. Guys that have put some good things together on tape, guys that have measurables, guys that have traits. And they just need a little bit more coaching, a little bit more, molding of the Play-Doh to get into where you want them to be. It's a really interesting class. But yeah, I agree with Danny. It's like once you get outside of day 2, it's pretty slim pickings. I mean, you got some guys with traits, but instead of just a little pepper on top, a little Italian seasoning mixed in before you take up the skillet off the burner, man. You got some guys that you're talking about the very beginning of the recipe. So you got some natural athletes, you got some natural size guys. At no point am I ever going to pound the table for taking a diminutive corner, but there are a bunch of those.
There's a couple tonight that I'm going to talk about that I really, really like in terms of potential, day 3 guys. Yeah, and
there's a couple of guys. There's a couple of day 2 guys that would probably fall where we are in 5 and 6. I think are really, really tasty. And we'll talk about those down the road. But tonight we're going to try and talk about guys that we're looking at on day 2 or have been hyped as day 2 guys, whatever the case may be. And we're going to kind of break these guys down and let you guys in on what we see.
All right, let's start with our first guy, Alontae Taylor. Take it away, Danny.
Yeah, Taylor's a guy that really has kind of shot up the draft boards recently. It started with the Senior Bowl, his performance at the Senior Bowl. Then he went over to the Combine where he ran at 4.3, 640. His kid's got size at 6 feet, 199 pounds, a 3-time SEC academic honor roll. So the kid's got a head on his shoulders. But really, his explosiveness, his lower body explosiveness was really on display at the Combine. 34.5-inch vertical, a 10+ foot broad jump. But again, 6 feet, 199 pounds. Got really good length in terms of 32 and a quarter arm. So, but there are some things in his games that I love, some things in his games that I don't like. So, let's go ahead and start with this first clip here, and we're going to start off here again. Taylor is a taller cornerback, right? So he's a guy that's going to have some trouble staying with these quicker, shiftier receivers on comeback and hitch routes. So those quicker hitting routes, here you see him, there's some lower body stiffness, that kind of hinders some of his change of direction along with, the long limbs, the long strides. He's unable to consistently sink his hips and just change directions and stop and start. So you'll see some of that when he's pressing against these guys that are just quicker and more shiftier and faster than him. But the other thing that he gives you is he gives you that size dimension. So that's why I think playing him more off-man coverage in a system like the Bears might be a more ideal fit for him. So here again, we're just talking about quicker, faster guys. It's a little bit difficult for him to stay in phase with them. Therefore, here, second clip, he goes to play some off-man coverage. You see him here playing that bail technique with that half turn, playing inside leverage. He sees that play develop in front of him, just plants and comes downhill aggressively. This is what you're going to want to see in these off man or these zone corners, guys that are aggressive coming downhill and they can wrap up and make and tackle, right? Again, plays off man, has the coverage awareness to be able to peek into the backfield, still know what's going on in terms of his guys and around him, but then just plants and transitions quickly. And that's what I'm looking for. Can you plant? Can you come downhill quickly? And then most importantly, can you wrap up and bring down the ball carrier? And as you see here, that's what Taylor can give you here. Some of that, quickness and some of that physicality post catch.
Clip number 3 is on its way. Here's another slow motion look at that play you just described, Danny. He's pretty good.
Doing some homework.
Yeah.
Love it.
Pretty good tackler, huh?
Yeah, that's the thing. He's aggressive, and that's when you see them, especially guys with. And that's the thing is that this guy he loves football. You could tell he plays with tenacity. His competitive toughness is off the charts here, and from what I can tell on his tape, and also when I saw him down at the Senior Bowl, kid does not get back down. The kid will compete. So this next clip here, we're talking about an aggressive press corner, right? This is a guy that possesses the length you like in his arms, about 32+ inch arm length. And you see him here just being able to disrupt the receiver's release, and he can reroute the receiver at the line of scrimmage, right? With his aggressive jam, he throws off the timing of the quarterback, and now he has the quarterback kind of look away from his initial receiver. Again, look at him, just kind of extend his arms, press, reroute, knock the receiver's neck back there. Quarterback gives him a quick look and says, all right, this guy's been rerouted. His timing's been thrown off. So now the quarterback goes ahead and looks away from him, his initial target, and now does there's an incomplete pass here, goes to a second option here, and just kind of, but what he could do there, what Taylor can do there is with that length, that aggressiveness and ability to press and jam and reroute the line of scrimmage, he can throw off the timing of an offense of a quarterback and then allow your, another half second or whatnot for your defensive lineman to get to the quarterback possibly, or make him, make the quarterback kind of, rush and maybe, make a bad throw or off timing or disrupt the play. But that is very important when you see these big, strong physical corners at the line of scrimmage. Can they press? Can they reroute? Can they throw the timing of a play off? And Taylor, for what he lacks in terms of change of direction, and we saw in that first clip, he certainly makes up for it in his aggressive play and his ability to, like I said, press and jam at the line of scrimmage.
The one thing about this play that he is totally aware of that he's got safety help, right? Right. This guy who is at the 11-yard line. And so he can play that kind of, it looks to me like he might be perfect for, like Danny said a minute ago, perfect for that cover 2 type defense.
Exactly. And that's the thing you're going to look for in these cornerbacks. You want to look for cornerbacks that could have that coverage awareness, have the ability to play their responsibilities, their sound assignment cornerbacks, but also guys that can transition quickly, come down, wrap up and tackle. But also, when you need them to play man press, man coverage, can do this, something like that. Can bang them at the line of scrimmage, can reroute at the line of scrimmage and throw off the timing of a play. So, that's what you're looking for in this type of a system. You're not looking for a guy that really can necessarily, come off and just continue mirroring down the field and all that stuff. I mean, those guys are great. Don't get me wrong. But also, you're going to take guys that don't necessarily have the downfield aggressive, speed to stay in phase, to be more aggressive up at the line of scrimmage. And that's what you kind of look for here in the system. Peanut Tillman wasn't a guy that covered, down the field every single time. He was a guy who was aggressive. He's a guy that jammed the line of scrimmage, was in a receiver's face, again, throwing off the timing, giving your defensive lineman a chance to get up there and make a play at the quarterback. So this next clip here, again, we're showing some of the aggressiveness here of Taylor. Here he guesses incorrectly at the snap, opens to that outside leverage, cannot really recover, so his jam is ineffective. All right, so then and slowing down the receiver. So the wideout does a nice job of crossing his face and then create that separation with that quickness. Here Taylor shows why sometimes his aggressive play and that demeanor can get him in trouble. Right, nice job of disposing the receiver, but again takes a bad angle to pick it here. So again, comes down, loses a battle at the line of scrimmage, right? And then loses the receiver. Now he's trying to come down as Pickett's trying to get out and get the first down with his legs. You see Taylor become a little more aggressive here. It takes a bad angle. To the quarterback, does a nice job again getting rid of the receiver, toss him to the side, but again get that angle, get a better angle there, maybe stop the quarterback short of that first down, and now you get the ball out of the hands of the offense. So again, aggressive play. This is a guy that will not back down. It's always running 100 miles an hour every time he's on the football field. The only thing is he's got to get more disciplined, got to get more coached up a little bit, just stay more in your lane there. But I never knock players for being too aggressive, because you rather have an aggressive player than a passive player. But there's times where, like that example right there, he just got a little bit too out ahead of himself, took a real bad angle, and allowed the quarterback to get a first down.
All right, here's the final clip. This against South Alabama. Yep,
and here you see a nice job here. Just kind of, again, this is going to be some I think this is press coverage, or he's going to ball off. Nope, he goes out the line of scrimmage, gets his hand on the receiver, all right, releases his man, turns and finds a football. Again, sees it, he sees a pass out on the flat, kind of was reading it prior to the snap, kind of knew what was going to happen there. Sees the ball out on the flat, turns on, and he bursts and attacks downhill, again, with aggression to go ahead and make the tackle and limit the gain here. Again, I'm talking about a guy that has coverage awareness, right? Knows what's going on in the field. Maybe knew he had some help over the top, could go ahead and release this guy, saw the play going out to the flat, and then comes right down with no hesitation, aggressive, goes down. Now, I want him to get a little bit lower, right? I want him to get a little bit lower there and wrap up the ankles, but, he does go waist high. He doesn't go shoulder pad high. It goes waist high, but it does a job, gets the guy down. And this is what I'm talking about. Guys that can transition quickly, come downhill, and again, make the tackle and make the play. And what we've seen so far with Taylor is he's got the size, he's got the speed, the long speed. He's got 4.36 long speed, so he can stay in phase on those deep, those goal routes, those routes down the field. The other thing is he does a nice job of being able to then plant, come back down, transition, and make a tackle. Now, does he get lost on some of these quicker, shiftier routes? Does he have the ability to cover inside quicker, shifter, slot receivers? He doesn't have that thing. He's just a bigger corner, a guy that can, again, make a play on the outside of the numbers. But again, plays with that aggression. I just love seeing that on tape.
Neil, your thoughts?
Yeah, I love the kid. I've been wanting to talk about this kid for 2 weeks, and we just keep on running out of time. This is another one of those kids this is another one of those kids that I loved in high school, man. And I watched him through the recruiting process, and and then he gets to Tennessee, and he throws up tape like this. By the time we get to his senior year. Aggressive as hell, physical as hell, explosive as hell. Danny talked a little bit about what he did at the combine. He goes into his pro day and even betters himself there. He jumps a 39-inch vertical and 11.1 broad jump. Those are elite numbers when it comes to guys that are 6 foot 200 pounds that they're playing on the corner. So that was tasty as hell. You like his length a lot. Got invited to Senior Bowl and popped a 20.53 miles an hour during the game at Senior Bowl. A lot of these guys that we're going to talk about today, a lot of the guys we talked about last week and the week prior, they were putting up 22s during practice, and that's fine. Everything's you're running around shorts and underwears and everything else, but during the game, if you're popping above 20, you're doing pretty damn good. You're playing pretty damn fast. But the other thing that was extremely impressive about the way this kid played during the game was that he popped a 6.67 yards per second acceleration burst, which is, I think, by far the longest stride, most explosive gait that any of these DBs, any of these defensive players had on game day. And so that tells you a little bit about how he plays on the field, what kind of lower body explosion that he has, as aggressive as he is, and what kind of thump he's coming downhill with. Danny talked about the academic side of things, 3-time academic honor. He's got his shit together. His play history, 45 games. This is going to be a trait tonight, guys. It's going to be a consistency. A lot of these guys we talked about have a ton of play history. Avante Taylor, specifically 45 games played, 34 started. Mule threw up the stats from last year. Over the course of his career, 162 tackles, 115 of those were solo. 4 picks, 19 PBUs, 4 forced fumbles, 2 defensive touchdowns. Had a pick during the Senior Bowl. So, productive kid, was a 4-year player at Tennessee. He came in with a ton of hype, as a receiver.
As a receiver, yep.
Yeah, so he comes in as a receiver, switches over to the defensive side of the ball, and has this kind of production. We see in the highlights how he plays multiple styles. He's impressed. He's off. Sports the run like hell. And again, we talk about the good and the bad. The things I love about him is that he's a really good open field tackler when he gets his hands on you, right? But can easily be juked out because he does play so kind of tight and narrow, within himself. And that kind of drives me crazy a little bit. He has a really odd stiffness about him that, it's really hard to sort of, place him in my list of players, where they fall in order, because, there's a lot of things you love about the kid. There's some things that drive you crazy about the kid. I think that's a lot of technique, related issues that can be fixed. And again, we're talking about a kid that barely played any corner throughout the course of his career, throughout the course of his life. So I think that, these are things that could probably be fixed. But a kid that run and jump as well as he did, I was kind of wondering as I was going through this evaluation, he never did any of the agility drills. We don't have those numbers, can't find them anywhere. I just wonder if that's because, maybe he is that stiff and he didn't want to, be found out, or if he just decided he, didn't want to do those, which is fine. I mean, we see plenty of stuff on tape that will make, people like us in the 4 walls of a scouting department love him. Right.
Right.
But his game is strength and physicality all the way. He loves contact. He hits hard. He's strong against blocks. He'll mix it up. Plays a ton of energy and juice too. In between plays, he's celebrating. He's hyping his teammates up. He's yelling. He's flexing. And you love that kind of swag that he brings. Great communicator. You can see that on tape. And also selected by his peers to the SEC Leadership Council. So in terms of leadership, in terms of being a guy that could be looked up to, a guy that can rally the troops. He's got all those types of things. He was the SEC Leadership Council. He served as vice chair. And, he also, if we can go back a couple years, guys, when everything was kind of grim during 2020, we didn't know whether we're going to play football or not. He was one of those guys that helped everyone see the light and live in reality. We can play ball. It's okay. He was one of the guys that really pounded his fist on the table and got the 2020 season underway. So, commend him for that. Intelligence, leadership, intangibles are high. I think in terms of when you look at the pluses versus the minuses, there's a lot more pluses than there are minuses. And a lot of the minuses are things that are probably coachable, but you're probably not going to take them high on day two because of that. You do want to get, you do want to get your hands on them and mold the Play-Doh, so to speak. But he's a guy that I think that can, be a potential option later on day two if we're there and still needing a corner.
See, this thing is like, this is the kid that you can kind of watch on tape right now. And Neil touched on the fact that he didn't do any of the agility testing or anything like that. And even if you run say, for example, a sub 7.3 cone, we can tell watching on tape, he doesn't have the change of direction ability that he needs to match with those quicker shifter cornerbacks. So for the receiver, so you can tell what kind of corner he is. This guy is I think tailor-made for this system. The guy that can press and reroute at the line of scrimmage, that can drop back, have that coverage awareness, and then be able to quickly transition and more importantly, be able to wrap up and make the tackle. So I think that is something that what this kid is. And this is what we're talking about again, coaching staff putting in players in position to succeed. You're not going to line up this guy up against a quick slot corner because he's not going to succeed there. But you put him up against those bigger your receivers, the DK Metcalfs or guys like that, the bigger body receivers. He's got the speed and the size to run with DK Metcalf downfield. He's got the ability to press and maybe reroute and slow down DK Metcalf at the line of scrimmage. Those are the kind of matchups you put him in position to go ahead and succeed. I think the right coaching staff, putting him in the right system can and with this kid's competitive nature and his willingness to be a dog on Sundays, I think this guy's got a chance to be one of those steals of the draft if you get him in the right position.
I love aggressive dudes, man. I love the way this kid plays.
Yep. What do you guys think about what Dane Brugler writes in his draft scouting report, which he calls The Beast, which it definitely is. It's an outstanding piece of work. He writes in his summary, overall, Taylor was primarily used as an outside corner for the Volunteers, but he has versatility across the secondary, and a move to safety might be his best option because of his range and physical demeanor. He will see a heavy dose of special teams in the NFL and might be a team's best option as a gunner, and he has him targeted as a fourth-round pick. What do you think about possibly Taylor moving to that safety position?
Well, like we talked about it with some of these offensive linemen, I think when Damian was on, in terms of, these tackles that project inside the guard, possibly, we say, give him a chance to fail a tackle before you move into the guard. For me with Taylor is give him a chance to fail at corner before you move into safety. Like I said, I love the kid's ability in terms of playing out the outside and being disruptor on the outside there. I think you said Dane had him going in the fourth round. Is that yeah. See, I don't see him. I mean, maybe I see him, late date, a late second round, early third round. I don't see him dropping into that fourth round. I'd be shocked if he falls into the fourth round range if he's available on day 3, because I just think that size, that speed, the athletic ability, and the willingness to tackle and the aggressiveness. I think that some team's gonna love him and maybe grab him in that middle to late second round area. So we'll see how it goes. Like I said, remember that run on corners is gonna happen that second round, and now you're gonna see teams in the later rounds try and get one of these guys. And I think that's a prime position where Taylor could fall. Now, if the Bears do like this kid, if the coaching staff says, hey, bring this kid in, maybe you could drop down from pick 48 or 39 or whatnot and move on down some slots, recoup some draft capital for the fourth round or fifth round, and then still get this kid if you targeted him in the middle till a part of the second round. So we'll see how that happens, see if the Bears like him, how much they like him. But definitely, I think fourth round is, if he's there, this kid's a steal.
Yeah, that was actually something I thought about in terms of my over the course of my evaluation process, was the idea of potentially moving this kid to safety, given how physical he was and how intense he comes downhill. the odd narrow stiffness that he showed on tape. I thought, well, if he doesn't work out a corner, I bet this kid would be a badass at safety. And with our need of strong safety down the road, and well, who knows, free safety even too, if Eddie Jackson has to get his head out of his ass. But in terms of position specific versatility, you always love guys that you can do multiple things with, right? That's one of the most valuable things you can have is position versatility. So if he's a guy that could project, in either room, then with those kind of measurables, I think you have a steal.
Very good. Neil, stay with you, and why don't you talk to us about Kobe Bryant?
Kobe Bryant. Hell yeah. So this kid's really interesting to me too. So Kobe, I watched 4 games on. I think it was the Alabama game, IU, the championship game against Houston, and then I got PTSD, against Notre Dame. I tried to find plays where he got borderline embarrassed or beat, and I couldn't find anything. And the kid is he won the Thorpe Award for a reason. Let's just go ahead and say that. Just off the bat, you look at him physically. He's just a well-built kid. He's got a big frame, 6'1.5", almost 191 pounds. He measured it at the Senior Bowl. 9.5 hands almost, 30 and a quarter arms, 74-inch wingspan. If you're talking in terms of the miles per hour, the GPS tracking, during the Senior Bowl clocked a 9.18 over the course of the game, which is still very good. Ran a 4.54 40 at the combine, but then followed up with a 4.47 at his pro day. Improved upon his time, showed that he does have the speed. He wasn't just marginal, which I think was key. I think a lot of people were really sort of ho-hum on him when he tested at the combine. Not that you're supposed to be that way, and I know a lot of media people probably said some things, but he followed it up with a 4.47, showed like, I can go ahead and blaze it up a little bit. Like I said, Thorpe Award winners from Glenville, Ohio, a Tegan, program over there. 2020, 2021, first team All ACC, two straight years. 2021 first team All-America, and team captain. And I love these guys, kind of like with Alontae Taylor. I love these guys that have leadership capabilities. And you talk about what you see in between plays when you're watching film, what you see pre-snap, what you see post-snap, the way that he goes about either congratulating his teammates or in terms of pre-snap, the way that he communicates with his teammates. He's often the one making calls, getting guys in position, relaying info, wherever the case may be. Those are all big time pluses with me. In terms of play history, 63 games played. He was one of those kids that came back for an extra COVID year. 49 starts, 4-year starter for this kid. Last year, 46 tackles, 11 passes broken up, 3 picks, 3 forced fumbles. He's a guy that if you go ahead and watch a film, in depth, plays predominantly off man and some zone, as opposed to the other guy Sauce, which for the record, that dude, if you're talking about physical as hell corners, that dude can bring some wood. It was impressive watching him. I didn't really go in depth in watching, Sauce, because really don't have any shot of getting the kid. But just watching him on the opposite side of the field while I was watching Kobe, that kid's impressive. But Kobe, Kobe's on the opposite side. He plays field very loose, very quick, twitched up, and he's a floater. He's a very easy mover. He's easy to stay with his receiver. He uses his length well. If you want to say what little of it he has, he's not as long as some of these other guys, but he uses what he has well. He's got adequate length. He uses it well. He keeps himself in the hip pocket, feels out the receiver down the field. When playing up on the receiver, he shows a nice jam arm, disrupting the route, and he's very sticky in coverage. Generally, wherever you didn't see much press, but you saw he showed enough to be able to execute press man coverage. He was physical enough when necessary, but he's definitely more of a finesse guy. Tackles well enough. I think that's one thing he needs to improve is his consistency in terms of his tackle technique and the way he comes downhill, his aggressiveness, so to speak. Again, if you talk about being a locker room guy, he's talked of very highly in terms of his leadership, his football intelligence, as far as him being a communicator. I talked about him relaying the calls. You could see him easily in round 3. I like him as an early day 3 guy, possibly also, with the intangibles, the body type, the athletic traits, a little bit of room for development. Eventually will be a starter. I think he's a guy that could come in and compete immediately. So I think he falls in that later day 3, early day 4 range for me.
For me, with Kobe, the thing I like about him is his size. I talk about 6'1", 193 pounds. We talk about some of that aggressive nature in terms of his ability to play corner. Again, I think this kid's an off-man cover corner. Again, ideally fit for this Bears scheme. Yes, there are some concerns for me with him. As opposed to what Neil had just said, for me, it all started at the Senior Bowl. I saw him get beat a lot across his face mask, a lot in the Senior Bowl. That tells me he doesn't have that agility, that quickness to be able to stay with these receivers, at the line of scrimmage. So that's why I like him more on that off man coverage, aggressive coming downhill. He's a willing run defender, which I do like as well. I talk about that length, that 6'1" and 193 pounds, that size. I do like that as well. Just to me, he's not a guy that could stick with with receivers, going across the field on crossers and all that stuff. So I think he has some trouble there. Could it be cleaned up a little bit with technique, possibly with some coaching, but definitely a guy that I kind of had high hopes for coming into the Senior Bowl, and it kind of disappointed me. I think for me, it's been downhill ever since then. But if you're talking about a guy, see right now, I got him as a day three. As a third round pick. So I think if you get him, if you go offense and in terms of the first two picks, the offensive line and receiver, and you get a guy like a Kobe Bryant and on the 71st pick, then that's a solid value pick there for me as well. So, but again, I think he's a good fit for this defense. There are some issues with him in terms of coverage, being able to stick with receivers and coverage downfield. At times he hasn't tracked the football very well for me. Doesn't, is late turning his head and trying to find the football, not consistent with that aspect of his game. So, certain things there, again, those are things you coach up, right? Being beat off the line of scrimmage right away. And when he's trying to press, it doesn't use his strength, if you will, to kind of jam and reroute receivers the way I like to see him, and put on tape. So, definitely a guy that you can work with, but not someone that I would kind of, like Neil said, he's more of a developmental kid guy. You kind of come in and maybe, coach up and before he's a finished product.
Here's what Dane Brugler writes. He said that he's responsible, not Brugler, but the cornerback we're talking about, responsible for 15 forced turnovers in his career, 10 interceptions, 5 forced fumbles, penalized only once in 2021, a pass interference call against South Florida. Dependable run defender, as you just said, Danny, battles through injuries, fractured his hand early in the 2019 season and played the rest of the season with a cast. 2-year captain. He strives to compete with that Mamba mentality. So those are some of his strengths, and as the weaknesses that he's pointed out, both you and Danny and Neil have talked about. So he's kind of an interesting guy to keep an eye on. Brugler does have him listed as a potential 3rd round pick.
The one thing I did forget, some of the positive I do like about him on his tape, Dane touched about it in terms of his ball skills. 10 interceptions, I believe 35 pass defense in his career. And one thing is he's aggressive at the catch point, right? He's a guy that will go after that football with the receiver at the catch point. So, that's one thing I do like about his game as well. So that's something to keep in mind.
Mm-hmm.
You're muted, Aldo.
I left camera and muted because I was blowing my nose. I didn't want you guys to see or hear that disgusting thing. All right, let's move on. Who do you got next there, Danny?
Well, my next guy is Zion McCollum from Sam Houston State. And the theme you're going to see here tonight, guys, is size, right? This is another guy that's got size at 6'2", 199 pounds. But we talked about with Taylor size. We talked a little bit about Kobe Bryant with size. But this is a different kind of cat. This is not an aggressive physical corner. He's a guy that size at 6'2", 199, and he's got explosive speed at 4.33, almost a 40-inch vertical, or 132 broad jump, ran a 6.483 cone, which shows that change of direction. So this is more of a cover corner kind of guy. It's not a guy that's going to be physical at the line of scrimmage. But when you put on his tape, you see something that's really, really impressive here. Started 10 games as a freshman in 2017. 4-year starter, which rare to see nowadays in college football. But although if we go ahead and start rolling this kid's tape here, this first clip here, we're gonna show here. Look how he misses the jam at the release here, misses the jam at the line of scrimmage. Right, the receiver was able to get off and run his crossing route. But watch Zion fight through traffic and use his long strides and speed to be able to run down the receiver from behind. So I like his competitiveness here right away. I like the way he doesn't give up on the play because, he messed up at the line of scrimmage, got bumped there a little bit. But you know what? I'm going to track this kid down using that 4.33 speed to be able to get this receiver and bring him down to the ground. So, this is where I talk about, Taylor, we saw him press, jam that guy, reroute him at the line of scrimmage. McCollum won't do that. McCollum, doesn't have the long arms that Taylor, is only about 30-inch arms as opposed to 32-inch arms for Taylor. Doesn't have the physicality in his frame like Taylor, but he does have that speed, that coverage ability that you're going to see later on some of these clips here when he gets downfield. But again, we're talking about here just competitive, drive to be able to go and make that play and go in and just, not give up on a play. And I want to see that in the corner, especially since he missed that jam at the line of scrimmage. This second clip here, we're going to see him lined up in the slot here, press coverage. He's able to open up his hips and then run step for step with the receiver down the field, staying attached to his hip pocket. Right, this is what you want to see: a cover corner being able to get downfield with the receiver. Now the play doesn't go his way here, but look at him, just in step to step, lock for lock with that receiver coming off the slot. So now you're talking about lining up some of these, these bigger receivers, the Larry Fitzgeralds, and when he was playing the Allen Robinsons, these big guys are being lined up in the slot now and being taken advantage of with these smaller, quicker, slot corners. With a kid like McCollum, you can move him in, you can kind of have him follow this guy, shadow this receiver, even if he's lined up in the slot. He's got the agility, the quickness to be able to stay with the receiver off the line of scrimmage and also get with them downfield in terms of being in his hip pocket. So that's some of the difference here we see with him. He's got the agility to be able to move and stay with these receivers down in phase, as opposed to Taylor was more of a guy, more of an outside guy strictly, and just stay with those bigger body receivers on those routes on the outside. This third clip here, we're going to see him again, press coverage. He trails the receiver on this shorter crossing route, fights through the traffic, right? The receiver's path is impeded by his own man here as he gets knocked down. But look at McCollum. He continues on his path and he adjusts and he makes a diving interception, right? So again, not giving up on a play, all right? He's fighting through traffic and you see him now continue his route and it makes a nice adjustment here. That's body control. That's an ability to track the football. And of course, the hands to go ahead and reel it in and corral that ball and make an interception. Again, we're talking about a guy that can probably, cross on either side of the field, can line up in the slot, can really stay in phase with the receiver. And this is some things that I like for McCollum. And again, with that 6'2", 199 frame, it's also a plus there as well. And this is clip. Is this clip? Oh, this is the clip
still on
three?
that one, yeah.
Okay.
We'll move over to clip 4 now.
All right. And then here, I just want to show you guys some special teams value here as we get to clip 4 here real quick. We see McCollum here. He's not just a guy that can play on defense. You can line up here at special teams and watch him just kind of fly off the football here with that burst, that bend, and just lay out with that length to go ahead and block this game-winning field goal. So he brings you some of that extra value too. We don't usually think of these guys on special teams, but we touch on it with Taylor in terms of him being able to go down and maybe be a coverage guy. McCollum here shows his ability to fly off the edge. Again, that bend to be able to turn that corner and then flatten to the football, extend out and then block a game-winning field goal. You don't think of these things until you see them on tape.
Yep.
And here, this is the last one here. This is, again, a press coverage versus a bigger body receiver we're going to see here. It does a nice job of just mirroring him off the line of scrimmage and again, stays in phase. However, is a tad late turning and locating the football, right? And so his lack of play strength here, allows the receiver to go ahead and use his size and strength to hold off McCollum and then beat him for the ball, resulting in a touchdown. This is where I see him. He's got to get stronger. He's got to be able to learn to battle through that catch point. We talked about Kobe Bryant previously being able to battle through that catch point. All right, so a couple of things here with him. I like the way he's in phase. I like the way he gets off the line of scrimmage, but turns a little bit too late. So you got to learn that. That's a coaching technique. You got to learn that quickly, turn around, locate the football, and then the receiver is able to basically hold him off of him by one hand and then allows him to make the catch. So those are things he's going to have to get better at. He's going to get stronger. He's going to have to get more physical through the catch point. And those are some of the things you have to work on with this kid.
What do you think about this guy, Neil?
Yeah, he's another one of these guys that have all the measurables, that have a absolute ton of pluses and very coachable minuses. You look at what he did at Senior Bowl in terms of what he measured in at. He was actually around 31-inch arms. He was well above
30 and 3/4. Yeah, 30 and 3/4 I got.
And then 31 and an eighth. He was at Senior Bowl, 30 and 3/4 at Combine. So he's around 31, right? 74-inch wingspan. Did clock another one of these guys that clocked a big time speed in terms of the GPS at Senior Bowl in game, 20.1 miles per hour, which is obviously absurdly impressive. at the combine when in the agility drills. Came in at 6'4" on the cone, 3.94 on the shuttle. Again, elite numbers, side to side movement, explosiveness. You put all those things together. In terms of the measurables and in terms of underwear Olympics, man, he absolutely crushed it. Kid with absurd play history, as Danny touched on it. On the front end, started as a freshman, 56 games played, 52 games started. Another one of these guys. I was a COVID senior, came back for one more year, put up a bunch of numbers, 46 tackles. 3 for loss, 2 forced fumbles, interception, 2021. Played multiple coverages at Sam Houston State, like a couple of these other guys. Off man, press jam, mirror, zone, did it all. Smooth athlete, and a guy that I wouldn't necessarily look at as a ball of explosion because primarily he plays at full speed all the time, on every snap, during every play. He's always going, full speed, and you don't necessarily see those times when he just like blows your mind with what he does. He showed how smooth he was in his hips during the combine drills. He's a guy that could be physical, and you like that sometimes he could be a guy that could be reckless. You like that he throws his weight around, throws his body around. He gives good effort in tackling, but that's one of the areas where I think he has to be more consistent. You saw a guy's quick out of his breaks, attacking the ball, fluid in transition, staying in phase and reacting. I like that he appears really poised in coverage, right? He's a guy that, and I watched the North Dakota State game, I watched the Montana State game, and I forget the third game that I watched, but in all those games, you see him oftentimes being very patient with the wide receiver, especially when he's mirroring, knowing that, he's got the speed and athletic ability to make up the difference if he gets out of position, which he does, and he goes ahead and makes it up quickly. Diagnoses the route, stays in phase, typically gets his head around the top to make a play on the ball, which is another one of those things like Danny touched on, he's definitely got to work on. And again, all these things that we're talking about, all the negatives, the minuses, they're all coachable things. He shows instincts in the way that he reads the receiver, anticipates the double move, recovers very quickly. I like his closing speed on the ball. Isn't afraid to bring some thump, like I said before, very physical kid. Competitiveness, he uses his length, his physical presence, his body positioning to affect the play, even though he doesn't necessarily always get the best jump on the ball. High pointing, being competitive in the air. Again, things that are coachable, things that he needs to work on, not big minuses.
The one thing I missed on, Neil, that I wanted to kind of bring up here is his ball skills. Guys, 13 interceptions throughout his career,
right.
54 passes broken up, and 6 forced fumbles. Right, we're talking about a defense that's gonna want to get that ball out. This is a guy that has it right there. He's trying to peanut punch it from behind there as he's trailing that receiver. So 54 passes defense, 6 forced fumbles, 13 interceptions. The kid's got ball skills as well.
Yep, and and on top of that, he just has unteachable traits. Right, he just needs to grow and develop a little bit more. Again, you touched on a special teams guy. I think right now, as he comes in, he's a guy that's going to compete. He's going to be a really good backup. He's going to have starter potential, and he's going to be a special teams warrior for you on the onset, because you can't just keep, 6'2", 200, 4'3", 39'5", 11-inch broad jump off the field.
Yeah. Yeah. He, Dane Brugler says he, as a gunner, he's NFL ready to go. And Brugler is just so infatuated with these testing numbers, and thinks that it'll take him a little while to, maybe get up to speed as a starter, but it could happen sooner than expected. I mean, this guy's got incredible skills. I just put up in the chat room that his testing numbers are better than any cornerback already on the Chicago Bears team. So
he's an athlete. Yeah, he's a terrific athlete. That's for sure.
Yeah,
that's on the, and he's got the length. He's got the size, and you definitely a guy, like I said, you can match him up. On either side, you can line up on the slot. He's got that versatility to be able to cover receivers. Kind of match him up. Again, that's going to be a jump in terms of competition from Sam Houston State to the NFL. That's going to be a transition period. Sure, that's no doubt about that. But the potential this kid has with that size and that athletic ability is really, really enticing to have.
Absolutely.
Very cool. Hey, Neil, why don't you talk to us about this gentleman right here, Cam Taylor-Britt?
Yeah, Cam Taylor-Britt was another one of those guys that was in Mobile, came out of Nebraska, Montgomery, Alabama kid. So, close to Mobile. I think Jim Nagy put on Twitter just yesterday, maybe. Mobile itself is expected to have 5 draftees in this upcoming draft, which is absolutely absurd. But Cam Taylor-Britt, coming in at 5'10" and a half, 5'11", a little bit of a half-inch discrepancy there, right around 200 pounds. In terms of length, 31 and 3/4 arms, 9 and 5/8 hands. Good wingspan of 76 and an eighth. Another one of these guys that clocked really well in terms of the GPS during the game, 20.2 miles an hour. Then came into the combine, ran a 4.3840 at 5'11", 200 pounds. Play history, he's got 41 games under his belt, 29 stars. Another guy that has a lot of leadership, was a team captain over in Nebraska. He was second team All Big Ten in 2021. Last year, Nebraska, 51 tackles, 3 for loss, a sack, 11 PBUs, a pick, a kick blocked, 6 career picks. He has starts in his play history at both cornerback and safety, with a bunch of special teams experience as a gunner and a bomber and a punt returner. All right. He's a guy that, right now I see as a role player, coming in that would absolutely excel at, special teams, maybe a safety conversion. If you look at the way that he plays on film, he's a guy that if you look at some of his highlights, he shows a lot of explosive traits. He shows a lot of speed. He shows a lot of recovery ability. Sometimes I think if you dig deeper into it, I think I watched Oklahoma and I watched Minnesota on this kid. There's times where he appears stiff in the hips and heavy-legged when it comes to covering receivers, reacting, changing direction, all those different types of things. He wasn't necessarily as quick, as fluid, as twitchy as some of these other guys that we talked about. But when he's in position to lay a hit, he's going to take the opportunity. I love his physicality, his aggressiveness that he plays with. He flashes all his explosive tendencies, but they're just not consistent. You just want to see more of that. He flashes physical play, but often sometimes he'll get manhandled by receivers on blocking plays. He's got, and again, we talk about the little minuses. Those are things that you can probably coach up. He's a strong kid. He's got to be taught how to get off or how to shed blocks in order to make plays on the ball. Because when he has an opportunity to make a play on the ball, he's going to light somebody up, and it's exciting to watch. But as of right now, I see this guy as a day 3 guy, but a really intriguing day 3 guy that could fall right in our 5-6 range, where we have 3 picks. A guy will come in, compete right away, especially on special teams. Will give us some depth, in the cornerback room. And again, I think this is a guy that is really enticing to think about moving to the safety room, putting him at strong safety, letting him play with everything in front of him, not having to worry as much about flipping his hips, changing direction, and just coming down and laying some wood on somebody. And I keep talking about how we need a guy that's going to be a physical presence, some guy that's going to make a receiver hear some footsteps. And I think this kid could be that kid down the road.
Yeah, I agree. Cam Taylor Britt is a kid, first of all, we talked about 5'11", 196, 4.38 40, 6'9", 3 cone. So the kid's got that lower body explosiveness, the athletic ability you look for, and some good size. You touch on a little bit there in terms of his history, prolific high school quarterback in the state of Alabama, actually went to Nebraska as a quarterback, then switched over to DB. A 3-year starter, both a safety and corner, it gives you that kind of versatility. Second team All Big Ten, team captain, all the stuff you love about him. But I agree with you 100%, Neil, in terms of I like this kid at safety, man, because he is a willing run defender. He has no problems coming down and thumping receivers going across the middle. I agree with you in terms of his play at corner was very, very consistent for me. His back pedal was very choppy in terms of his footwork. A lot of times you see him getting up straight up in his back pedal, which is not good for a corner. Has difficulty staying in phase with receivers downfield. So, but you bring that size, you bring that athletic ability, you move him in the middle of the field. Now you got range where you go sideline to sideline. I love this kid as a developmental prospect, primarily at safety, a guy that can probably come down and cover those big tight ends or receivers in the slot as a safety for you, but not a guy that I would line up as a corner for me right now. So, if you're going to bring him in a 5th, 6th round and switch him over to safety, I'm all for it. But if you're going to bring him in and make him your cornerback, I have some troubles with this kid playing cornerback at the next level. So, but definitely like the size, like the athletic ability, like the willingness as a run defender. It's got a good frame, muscular frame, well defined. I think this is a kid that if you move him to safety, you coach him up, you have a chance of potentially getting him a starter there and down the line. Not right now though.
Yeah, definitely. All those starts, he has a safety in his career, so he has it under his belt. He's been coached up how to do it. Smart kid, team captain, football intelligence. And you did see on tape, too, him coming up and covering the slot from the safety position if you go a little bit further back. So, a very, very intriguing kid from that standpoint, being a developmental kid you can throw in that safeties room and being the thumper that we're looking for.
Brugler says that he might sneak into the 2nd round just because of the aggressiveness and the size-speed ratio, but probably more likely end of the day 2 pick we'll be keeping an eye on him.
That'd be kind of rich for me at cornerback. I mean, especially for a kid that shows so much in terms of his inconsistencies at cornerback at Nebraska. So, I mean, that would be really rich for me. But like I said, Neil touched it. If it's day 3, a guy to move over to safety, I'm all for that. But to bring him in as corner, that's going to be a little bit too rich for me.
Very good. All right, Mr. Shimon, why don't you take it away with Monteric Brown?
Yeah, Monteric Brown is a kid that the more I watched, the more I loved watching him on tape. You know, as a kid, not a big name guy, you know, but if you put him on, you put on his tape, again, you see a guy, you know, a good sized corner at 6 feet, 196 pounds, 31 and a quarter arm length. You know, ran a 4.55 40 at the combine, so he's not a blazer. However, I do think he runs faster than on the football field because he looks like a you know, high 4.8 guy, 4.4 guy for me. But anyway, 4.55 is something that we'll take here, especially as an off coverage, you know, cover 2 corner. 11 reps on the bench press, 34-inch vertical, 7.273 cone. Again, this tells me he doesn't have the quick loose hips to be able to stay in phase, you know, shifty, quicker receivers, but when you put on his tape, although as we go and roll these clips here for him, you know, we're talking about a guy that's smart, a guy that's instinctive, and a guy that is willing to come down in terms of being, you know, as a run defender too. So again, I like the size, I like his length. But in here we're going to see some of these clips here. I like the way in this first play here, he keys and he reads the screenplay, fights through the blocker, gets low, trips up the receiver as he diagnosed that play prior to the snap. He saw it, he reacted, and he made the play. You know, this is what you're going to have to see from these Bears corners now, doing something like this, off coverage on these quick hitting plays, these slip screens, these bubble screens, come downhill, fight through that blocker, get low. He doesn't wrap him up, but he slows him up. He allows his teammate now to come in and just finish the job. So again, aggressive player, smart player, instinctive player, and a guy that's got, you know, pretty good size at the cornerback position. All pluses for me so far with Monteric Brown. This next clip here, again, I just want to show Brown is a solid run defender. Here he notices how it comes up and takes on the receiver, sets the edge, funneling the ball carrier back inside to the rest of his teammates. Now, this might not be a big, you know, play in terms of stat, you know, and stat stuffers or anything like that, but this is key in terms of run defense. He comes down, he sets that edge, doesn't allow Matt Corral to go ahead and get that edge and get outside and get the first down, possibly even a touchdown. He does it. He funnels him back inside to his defenders or his teammates, and they make a tackle on Matt Corral and stopping him short of the first down. So this is something that I see on tape with a kid like Monteric Brown. Again, things that you don't see on the stat sheet, right? But things when you watch it film, you see a kid come down here, and this is part of being a good run defender. This next clip here, we're going to show some of his abilities here to be able to be in phase downfield. It's an off coverage here. He's a right receiver, tries to run a stop and go route. You know, Brown has the athletic ability to go ahead and a foot quickness, I should say, to go ahead and stop and start, and he stays in phase downfield with the receiver. Forces a tough throw and catch, you know, attempt by the receiver here. Brown does a nice job of squeezing that receiver to the boundary, using that to his advantage here, giving the quarterback as little patch of grass to be able to drop that ball into that area as possible. Again, still the presence of mind, though. Look at the end of the play here. The presence of mind to go ahead and locate that football, swipe through the catch point, and make that sure that's an incomplete ball. I love this play here with Monteric Brown. Again, being able to stay in phase on a stop and go route, showing the athletic ability, the quick feet to be able to stay there. Again, that size we talked about, turn around, turns his head, tracks the ball, and it has a presence of mind to go ahead and swipe through and make sure that ball is incomplete. This next clip here, I'm gonna talk about here. I love the physicality he brings as a run defender. Again, just look how physical he is. Comes downhill, takes on that lead blocker, again, setting that edge and making that run flow turn inside. You know, this is, again, not a stat stuffer here. This is something that you only catch when you watch on tape. But this is important for cornerbacks, guys. Be able to funnel that, take on that lead blocker, not get blown out the play, and make that running back go inside to your teammates to be able to, you know, stop them short of the first down or a touchdown. On this last clip here, again, we're going to show him an off coverage, right? Open back pedals, opens his gate, you know, the wrong way to the outside. Wide receiver takes that inside leverage, but look how quick he is. And he's fast enough to be able to get back in phase, look back, locate the ball, and make a terrific play on it. Okay, so again, he ran a 4.55 40. You know, this to me doesn't look like a 4.55 guy for me. I mean, it looks like a guy that's going to run into 4.48 or something like that. Again, takes the wrong, opens up incorrectly. I was able to presence of mind to get back in coverage, so he shows that recovery quickness to get back downfield, looks at the football, and makes a tremendous play on the ball. These are things I can tell you. The more I watch this kid, whether it's his run defense, whether that play in coverage, whether his ability to stop and go on sluggos and all this rest like that. This is a kid, the more I watch, the more I liked. And I'm telling you, if this kid slips to that pick 71, I think he's a steal.
I do have to apologize because I know somewhere I have access to the GPS numbers from East West, and I didn't follow up on trying to find where those are. And so I will have those next show. I will find them. I'll have them next show because I feel the same way in terms of he's a lot faster play speed than he is testing speed, because he was on wide receivers and he was making plays. I think it's really because a lot of times, when you open up on a play wrong, or when you don't have just like the natural burst and the natural numbers, wherever the case may be, two of the things I wrote down on this kid were intelligence and instincts, right? And those are two things I love most about this kid. And the other two buzzwords I wrote down was reliable and stable and steady, because he was always in place to make a play. It was really hard, kind of like Kobe. It was really hard to try and find this kid way too out of place, or not in position, or whiffing on a tackle, or whatever the case may be. He was a kid that also had 5 picks last season, which is the most by a Razorback since 2021. So in terms of productivity, he has it. Had 54 tackles last year. If you look at the tape, mainly a cover zone corner. It's perfect for what we need. And again, showed really good FBI, was very poised in coverage. And there were times I felt like he lacked the foot quickness and speed, like the elite level foot quickness and speed to stay with receivers on complex or deep routes, which is kind of like what we saw in some of those clips there, where like he opens himself wrong, where he gets crossed over wrong, and then comes back around to recover and make the play. Which again goes back to some of that explosiveness that he has, and comes back to the play speed that he has. And I need to find that number, because I bet it'll be a pretty impressive number somewhere in the 2021 range, and that will really solidify what we're talking about tonight. But think about him, and again, we've been talking about it all night. Guys that are aggressive, guys that are physical, guys that bring some thump, bring some wood, like to lay guys out. This kid has it. And we saw it on the clips that Danny brought up. He brings a physicality when he's tackling. He makes a really good effort to wrap. I don't think he's one of those guys where you have to really, coach him up in terms of how to, execute, tackling properly, because I think that he is a kid that, and you talk about play history, 42 games, 34 starts at a program that has really coached up defensive players pretty well. If you look at the recent track record of Arkansas kids coming into the NFL, he's a very well coached kid. I think he'll be a really solid zone corner. Potentially another kid I thought could excel at safety as well. But I think I definitely want him in the corner room first, and see where it goes from there.
See, for me, when I first put on his tape, I'm like, all right, this guy's got some twitch to him. Now he's not a twitched up, cornerback. Like we'll see some of those later on. But I'm talking about, this is a kid that has got the size. For me, when he's in press coverage, he can mirror off the line of scrimmage. He's got the quickness to be able to mirror off the line of scrimmage. He's got that, like I said, speed to stay in phase downfield. We saw that one clip where he opened up his hips incorrectly, opened his gate wrong, turned the receiver, got inside leverage, and was able to quickly recover and get back in phase and make a play on the football. And that's a speedy receiver for Ole Miss there. And so he's able to catch up, get back in phase, like I said, make a play on the football. So the more I watch this kid, the more I like this kid. And I say his numbers prior to last year, I think he only had 1 interception. I think last year kind of explored there with 5 interceptions. So I think that maybe that might be something that might bring him down in terms of ball production. Maybe that 4.55 speed will bring him down, or I'm not sure, but I'm telling you, this kid, if you get him in that 3rd round range, he's a guy that potentially can come in and compete for a job right away. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be a starter next year, opening day or opening week, but I'm just saying what he shows in that first clip, right? We talked about him being able to pre-snap, diagnose the play, kind of see what's happening, be able to fight through that blocker, make, trip up the receiver, and then allow his teammates to come in and make the play. Again, I'm just not, saying this guy's going to be a shutdown corner day one, but I like seeing that in my college guys. I like, especially guys playing the SEC. He's a tested competitor. Goes up against probably Traylon Burks in practice every damn day. So that's one of the better receivers in this draft. So this is a guy that's been tested throughout his career. And there's the fact that he just read that, attacked it quickly. Doesn't stop keeps fighting through that blocking attempt and makes a play. It's what I love seeing on tape. And I think I'll tell you guys, I keep saying this over and over again. The more I watch this kid, the more I like him.
When I first started talking about him, I used terms like steady and reliable, and And, I think oftentimes those can be misconstrued as derogatory words, but I think in this kid's case, those are great words to have because there aren't a whole lot of corners that come in day one ready to play. And you don't have to worry too much about them being in position, tackling the right way, fundamentals, technique, and all those different types of things. Like the things with him, again, we talk about, coachable minuses with all these guys, right? Very, very minute minuses. The things that you really just have to make sure that he's set up with is, some technique, some fundamental things, but just mainly get him into the system, right? Just get him seasoned and he'll be ready to go. I think he's going to come in, compete day one. And again, not going to be a starter day one, probably most likely going to be a special teams guy for the first couple of years, but down the road, I would not be surprised if he's, on top of the depth chart at either one of the positions of corner or safety.
Call me just some guy who's madly in love with him, but I'm telling you, I could see him coming in and possibly competing for a starting job next year, man. I'm telling you, that's how much I like this kid.
Brugler doesn't like him as much as you do, but he does say that he's best suited for a cover 2, and he's got all the perfect traits for a cover 2. But he's got him listed like as his 39th cornerback. That is really low.
I do have him as a day 3 guy, but definitely not that low.
Yeah, I'm surprised that he's got him that low, but
I got him in a 3rd round range. Third, if he slips 4th round, that's an absolute steal for me. But I'm telling you, I'm really like this guy.
Okay. I'm going to ask people in the chat room if you've got any questions to fire away. We kind of finished a little early with some of our evaluations, which is fine.
I do have one more. I don't know if Neil has any more, but I got one more player. I thought I put Marcus Jones from Houston.
Marcus Jones, who I just drafted in one of my recent mocks. Take it away, Danny.
All right, so this is a kid, man. I'm talking about. We talked about size, talked about strength, we talked about some of the other things. They're all out the window with this kid. This kid is 5'8", 174 pounds, maybe 177 pounds. Short arms, 28, 7/8 short arms. Doesn't have the prototypical size and speed you want, or size, I should say, you want on the outside. But man, talk about an electric player. You put on this kid's highlight and you just cannot get your eyes off the screen. He's a quick twitch, undersized. He's a slot corner for me, right? He's a slot corner, loose hips, quick feet, got that start and stop ability. Primarily though, what he does on special teams, guys, this kid's got 9 kickoff and punt return touchdowns in his career. Start off his career at Troy and then end up transferring over to Houston. But this kid can give you some of that stuff here in terms of special teams. Like, we're talking about day 3 guys, that guys that have traits, that guys that can come in and help you on special teams. This is the primary guy that I want to target if you have that 4th round pick in this draft. But I think currently the Bears don't have a 4th round pick. But if you can maneuver and get yourself a 4th round pick, this is a guy, again, nickel corner, scrappy. I talked about quick twitch, body. He's got body control, his ability to adjust and contour his body to make plays on the football. Again, he's undersized, but he doesn't back down from anybody. So you like that feistiness, you like that competitive drive in him. He had, let's see, his first career, he had 9 interceptions, 31 passes defensed. But again, the 9 kickoff returns for a touchdown are huge. He averaged 28 and a half kickoff yards per kickoff return. He averaged let's see, what was it? Almost 15 or 20 yards, between 15 and 20 yards per punt return. So again, gives you all that stuff and can be a nickel corner. He's not going to be an everyday starter on the outside. He's a guy that could probably be in your dime package at best. And like I said, be a guy that can cover that slot receiver. But again, what he gives you on special teams is well worth that day 3 draft pick, in my opinion.
Guys, a philosophical question. My man Jordan has been having a debate with Greg Gabriel over Twitter about arm length. Jordan loves Roger McCreary. Greg says his arms are too short. And they go back and forth. And now Jordan writes that Marcus Jones's arm length is the same as McCreary, and he's just as scrappy. The issue is you can play McCreary on the perimeter, but Jones gets worked out there. He's more of a slot guy, I guess, is what Jordan is saying. He's got another chat response here. The issue is how Marcus Jones can hold up against power slots that are taking over the league. I totally agree with that. They are certainly taking over the league. So what do you guys think about arm length for a cornerback? How much value do you place on it? Can it make you afraid of a guy despite the fact that he might have good tape?
If a corner is, of course, so I'm a fan of McCreary as well. So I'm right there with Jordan. I like McCreary in terms of 5'11", 190 pounds. You talk about a guy that runs a low 4.5 40. He's got the experience. He's got the toughness to play on the outside. And he's a guy that doesn't have the long arms. And what that does to me, where it concerns me with the arm length for a cornerback is we've seen some of these plays where there, it's a tight window throw. The corner might reach around the receiver, might not have the long arms to be able to go ahead and knock that ball down. Or the other thing is predominantly where concerns me, and something that I look for on tape is, can he wrap up and bring a tackle? A lot of times guys with shorter arms have trouble in terms of wrapping up and securing the tackles. And that's where you see a lot of the times on tapes. With McCreary, when I watch his tape, he's a guy that, again, competitive, tough kid, battle tested in the SEC, a guy that went up against top level competition and always stood his ground. So he's that guy, again, another one talking about who's got off coverage ability in terms of a guy who's got some that coverage awareness, guy who can peek into the backfield and then plant and drive and make a play on the football. So I'm a big fan of Roger McCreary. I've been, I think, with the second or third show we had this year, I was like, Roger McCreary is a guy from Auburn that I really do like. So I know that his arm length is a concern, but again, the concern for me is, does he wrap up and bring a tackle, tackle the ball carrier? Does it hinder him in coverage? Hinder him in coverage might be an issue, but again, for McCreary, to me, he was always a guy that wrapped up and tackled. He has some misses here and there, but it wasn't something that really concerned me. With Marcus Jones, you combine his short arms with his short stature, that's a little something that you kind of a little bit worried about, because he's limited, right? He's limited to only possibly as a nickel corner, a guy that can cover the slot. He's a guy that's going to probably be, if they bring in a bigger receiver to run the slot. Now he's in the slot, he's up against a bigger receiver, like say Allen Robinson or something like that. Now he's at a mismatch, right? So now you have to worry about that. But the thing with Jones is his competitive nature. He doesn't let his eyes, define him. You see him, knifing through piles and wrapping up ankles of ball carriers and bringing them down. So, that's something you have to, kind of consider as well. So that's why for me with Jones, he's more of a day three guy. Hey, if he doesn't pan out in terms of a corner, put him back as a kick returner, right? You can make him a punt returner, kick returner. He'll give you more than enough value in terms of a day three pick in that area right there. But for McCreary, he's got the size, he's got the pedigree to go ahead and go up against these tougher, big name competition in terms of the SEC conference. And his arm length, while not ideal, doesn't concern me as much, because I don't see him missing tackles and I see him making plays on the football. So with McCreary, he had 30 pass defense guys, in his career at Auburn, 6 interceptions. So this is a guy that doesn't really, to me, that it doesn't hinder him in terms of his arm length. With Jones, a different story because of that body frame, but for McCreary, I think you can play him at outside corner and he could be a starter for you.
Yeah, I mean, you put these guys in a side by side. McCreary has 3 inches and almost 20 pounds on Marcus. So they're two different body types, two different players, two different types of athletes, right? And I think a lot of times too, McCreary is just small in his length numbers all around. He's sub 9 hands, he's 29 1/4 arms, 70 and 3/4 wingspan. Like in terms of his length numbers, they're absolutely atrocious. But I think a lot of times, with certain players that have elite cover skills, technique, instincts, competitiveness, a lot of times you can overcome that. And I think McCreary is one of those types of kids that has figured out a way to overcome the fact that he wasn't God gifted with elite, measurables. And so that's where I see the difference. And, again, like Danny said, I think the Marcus kid, I think, he's a kid that, if he doesn't work out in the DB room, at least you have an elite special teams guy with his speed and explosiveness. In terms of his stature, he looks like a kid. He looks kind of like Jakeem Grant a little bit, right? I mean, a small kid, shifty, explosive, twitchy, all those different types of things. And if you could at least get that out of him, I mean, shit, we loved Devin Hester for 10 years, right? if you get a guy that can score touchdowns, it doesn't matter where he plays.
Yeah, good point, guys. Go ahead, Danny.
No, I'm saying like that's what he brings you in terms of the added value from Marcus Jones, right? So, and again, the frame and the length, could he be, and also durability. He wasn't able to play or participate in the combine because he's had surgery on both of his shoulders. So, durability could be an issue with Marcus Jones. That's why he's a day 3 pick for me. Again, day 3 guys are guys that I pick traits out of, things that they bring, whether it's size, whether it's speed, whether it's athletic ability, whether it's, something that they specialize in. And with Marcus Jones, his competitive nature, his athletic ability, his quick twitch ability, and his punt return skills and kickoff return skills are something that I really, really value. And I think if you get him somewhere in that day 3, I think it'll be a nice value pick for you just on special teams alone.
Dane Brugler says overall Jones is small on paper but big on tape with sticky cover athleticism, physical compete skills, and excellent on-ball production. He is tailor-made slot cornerback in the NFL with playmaking ability as a return man. He also notes here that he had shoulder surgery, Marcus Jones did, in December. Who knows? That might make him drop down out of day 2 and into day 3. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think it will. That's why I've targeted him in that day 3 range. And again, his stature is going to be an issue with him. The 5'8", sub 29-inch arms. That's going to be an issue with some NFL, executives and some talent evaluators. So I think that's going to be something that's going to drop him down. Plus the fact that he could just be a returner. He just is coming off of an injury. So I think that you could see him in that 4th, 5th round range. Maybe even maybe even lower. I'm not even sure. But definitely a guy, like I said. Day 3, you get this kid in, he could help you possibly as a slot corner, but he'll definitely help you on special teams. Excellent stuff. Go ahead, Neil, you had a thought?
No, I was just agreeing.
All right.
Agreeing.
Well, maybe you can answer this question, Neil, from Squidward Dennis Balls.
That's an awesome name, man.
Yeah, it really is, man. That deserves to be on a building or something. I don't know. Name a bridge after Squidward Tennis Balls. He asks, which is more important, speed or play recognition? That's kind of an interesting thought, something that I can see scouts debating. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think a lot of times they go hand in hand, but if you have a guy that has all the speed in the world but can't figure out what the hell's going on around him, and you have a liability out there. I always think back when I think about this debate. I always think back to a player named Dwight Ellick, who was starting cornerback at Notre Dame. I think it was late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah,
or number 24. Got beat horrendously every week, but they played him because he had 4.3 speed. He never played in the NFL. He never ran the Olympics. Notre Dame played him because he had 4.3 speed, and that's the only reason that I could possibly come up with. But the problem is that you can have all the speed in the world, you could be God gifted in terms of that particular attribute. But if you can't diagnose a play, if you can't read the receiver, if you can't ball track, and you can't make a play on the ball, then you're essentially worthless. You're just fast for no reason. Mm-hmm. So that's why I probably rank play recognition higher, because that goes with your ability to process, your cognition, with like how you see the game, your awareness. That's a critical factor. You can't have you can have play recognition without the speed, but you can't have speed without play recognition.
Yeah. Good point. What do you think, Danny?
Yeah, for me, it goes hand in hand because, all right, so if you're talking about a guy like Neil just pointed, a guy that can run a 4.3 but has no, coverage awareness, no speed, no player recognition, he's going to get beat most of the time. But if you have a guy that runs a 4.7, 4.8, that's also a slow corner that's probably going to get beat just off of athletic ability. So, if you have a guy that runs like say a 4.57 or 4.6 possibly, but he's smart as heck, play recognition, it gets a jump on the receiver, is able to key off of the receiver, able to key off of whatever the offense is doing, he can make up for that lack of elite 4.3, 4.4 speed with some of that play recognition. But so it's kind of go hand in hand. He can be deprived of speed, can't run 4.7, 4.8, but he also doesn't have to necessarily have to be a 4.3 guy if he has the play recognition and the coverage awareness.
You guys have any thoughts on Texas cornerback Josh Thompson? He's visited the Bears twice, according to Scox. Dane Brugler has him down as a 5'11 and a quarter, 194-pound cornerback who has aggressive skills, but he has him actually ranked lower than Monteric Brown. I think he's got him like 39 or 40, and looks like a priority free agent is what he's been listed at. Have you guys had a chance to look or learn anything at all about Thompson?
I haven't delved into his tape. I've just seen some Texas film, and I've caught him play a couple plays here and there. From what I see, just a kid's got solid size at 5'11". I believe it's 194 is what he measured in at. 30 and 7/8 arm length in terms, and run a 4.40. So he's got some of that, some of that speed and stuff. So he's a guy that could possibly get drafted, late, like in the 7th round or something like that. But just in terms of overall play, and nothing really stuck out on tape for me in terms of what I saw from what I had seen from Texas, but I haven't really dived into his tape that deeply yet.
Yeah, he was actually one of the next corners I have on my sheet to pop into next. He was a guy that was invited to Senior Bowl, had kind of a marginal time there. He didn't really stand out. He didn't do anything special. At the combine, 5'11 and a half, 194, almost 31 arms at 30 and 7/8, 9 and 3/8 hands. Decent measurables. Again, not a guy that jumps off the page in terms of his measurables. Ran a 4.4. In terms of what he did on game day, though, he was one of these guys that performed well in the GPS metrics. He ran 19.56, which is top higher end speed. The thing that pops off though is the 5 yards per second max acceleration, which is pretty good. Like I was talking about with Alontae Taylor, 6.67 is absolutely absurd. 5.02 again is you don't call that elite, but you call that pretty high end. So when he explodes, he can explode. He can cover some ground. So that's the one thing that kind of triggers me about him in terms of wanting to watch the kid. Is that he does have some traits that kind of make you he could have something. So he's one of the guys I'm going to watch next, and we might pop him on next week. We'll see.
And another thing about him is no ball production, right? He's a 5th-year senior, right? He had, for 5 years at Texas, he only had 7 passes defense and 2 interceptions, right? So in a conference that throws the ball all over the football field, he's a guy that doesn't make much plays on the football. So again, he's a guy that's probably being brought in or just being on a probably undrafted free agent, or if he's drafted, is because of his traits. Where we talked about day 3 guys that traits, right? You got that 4.4 speed, you got the 5'11 frame. Maybe we can coach you up and we can work with you, see what you can give us here. So that's probably some, or maybe even on special teams, a guy that can come in and give you something on special teams. So those are what they look for on day 3. Guys with traits, guys with something that they can coach up and maybe take advantage of. Also that there could be guys with red flags in terms of off the football field too. So those are things you look for on day 3. But definitely a guy that not really high on my list in terms of a guy that can come in here and be a day 1 contributor.
Right.
Based on what I'm reading from Brugler, I think probably what they like about him is that he plays with a very violent style. And so that's, that type of toughness is something that Eberflus has talked about. But I think he's more of a camp body. And do you remember the name Steven Denmark, his 7th round draft pick from I forgot the name of the college because I've rarely heard.
Valdosta State.
There you go. Well done. So, and
I love Denmark, man. I thought he had some potential. They just never gave him anything to do. I mean, never coached him up.
Give him anything to do. Like he's an intern or something.
I mean, they didn't coach him up. I felt like he just never got an opportunity. Then he got injured. Remember, he got injured at one camp.
That
he was
hurt
off
a lot. Yeah. See, we were all expecting to see him play in that first preseason, but he never got on the field because of an injury. Right. And then after that, he just kind of got lost. He's on somebody's roster right now. I forgot who it is, but he's just an intriguing physical specimen, and who knows, maybe he'll be a late bloomer. We'll see him play in the NFL soon. But
remember that kid that Kareth White they drafted from Florida Atlantic? Is a speed guy having a 4.3, running back with speed. Didn't make the roster here, but ended up playing for the Steelers, right? And again,
scored a touchdown in his first game with the Steelers.
Right. So these are guys you look for day 3, guys with traits, guys you can bring in here, and maybe you can get something, catch lightning in a bottle. Special teams guys are usually day 3 guys. So, they're definitely like I said, guys with red flags in their background, also guys you can probably bring in here on day 3. And that's what you look for in that portion of the draft. But those first 2 rounds, those are where you get your starters most likely.
Mm-hmm. I like this question posed by Cliff. He says, do you guys see the potential for discussions, offense versus defense between Poles and Flus? Because Flus is going to want some stars on that defense, and he'll want, everybody's expecting cornerback and offensive tackle, and not everybody, but a lot of people in round 2. But it's possible it could be wide receiver and offensive line in round 2, and maybe Eberflus won't be too happy about that. You kind of anticipate there being some nice arguments between the 2 guys.
There always are. There's always, I mean, it's never, draft rooms are always, there's always back and forth and we want this guy, we want that guy. But, the one thing that I think Ryan Poles has kind of, earmarked here with this team early on is that he's going to, it's his team. He's going to build this roster. And I think, as long as he takes care of the offensive and defensive line, so far, he's made a couple of signings here on defensive line. The offensive line needs to be taken care of, and I think whether it's a later on, free agent signing, a veteran free agent after the draft, post draft, we'll see, or he's going to attack it aggressively in the draft. We'll see here, but I think the offensive line is going to be addressed. Now, Eberflus, in terms of what he wants, I think whatever's left after the draft, whatever holes or whatever depth that he sees lacking on a particular position, I think that's where you're going to see the Bears then go out there and maybe get some veterans here to bring in to be able to help, give you some depth there. But I don't think there's going to be a banging of heads, if you will, and saying, oh, I want this guy, and you're already hurting my career by giving me a receiver instead of that corner I wanted. I don't think that's going to happen. But I just think they're both on the same page. They're all going to both going to have a plan going into this draft and hopefully get some quality players.
I see a lot of respect floating around that building right now.
Yeah.
I think that's critical in things like this, and again, I mean, Danny said there's going to be a lot of contentiousness, on draft day in the draft rooms, guys that are pounding the table for a guy that don't get their wishes granted. You're always going to have that. I certainly have had my fair share of that. I'm still pissed off about.
Neil and I get connections here on this thing. He wants the safety of that 39th pick. I want a corner.
I never said 39. I'm going to leap through the screen and punch you.
See,
it's contentious. Your ass.
It's contentious. See,
he's going to do a Will Smith slap.
Damn it.
It's contentious. I told you.
Hey, guys, I've started to do mocks now, and because it's the big free agent signings, if there are any to come for the Bears, are going to be after June 1st when we see cut downs and we'll see some name guys. So it's a pretty good time to be doing mocks, and I've done probably a half dozen to a dozen. And one of the things that I've kind of started to lean towards is those first three picks, the 2 in round 2 and the 1 in round 3, to me are untouchables. I don't want to trade down and accumulate more potential starters. I want 3 starters in those 3 picks. And if somebody wants the 5th round pick, and so we can pick up more guys who the difference between a 5th rounder and a 7th rounder is negligible many times, then do that. Trade those day 3 picks. But the day 2 picks, do not touch them. What do you guys think?
Well, and for me, it's just, I guess, who's sitting out there who's available, right? If a player drops, a player that's going to be in the first round, he drops to you in that second round, you got to grab him. You can't mess with that. You just got to go ahead and grab the player. Now, with that the 48th pick, which they got with the Khalil Mack trade, Poles had said, that gives him one of the reasons why that was attractive to him, because it was a top 50 pick. Plus, it gives them options to maybe recoup some draft capital. So that tells me that Poles, it told the rest of the league, hey, I'm open for business. You guys want 48? Depends on how the board is going. Depends on if there's a run on corner. If there's a team that still needs a quarterback, and there's one of these quarterbacks drops to them in that top of that second round, and you know what, they might come up and say, hey, we'll give you our second or third and whatever. You can't resist that. And now you just kind of have to kind of go through. The thing with the Bears is they have a lot of needs, right? We haven't even covered linebackers yet. We touched on Christian Jones the last couple of shows, but they're Christian Harris, sorry. But they're going to need linebackers here. I know there was talk about Anthony Hitchens being in for a visit. So that could be a guy that could possibly be their strong side linebacker. Again, we talked about it earlier. The third linebacker will not be on the football field for a majority of the play. So maybe that's not a priority position for the Bears. Maybe we think it's more a priority than they do. So we'll see how that goes. But there are a lot, we haven't touched on safety. We haven't touched on a lot of these positions. Next week, I'm going to do a deep dive into the interior offensive lineman. That's a position that we're going to have to take a look at here as well in an upcoming. So if you get some of these players that if there's a run on a certain position that you are not really looking for, and you can become a receiver drops down or another player that you wouldn't expect kind of drops down, and you get an offer that you can't refuse, you're going to have to go and take it because you need draft capital, because you need to build this roster, because the depth on this team is lacking at this moment. So that's the only position I see. But in terms of with you, Aldo, if you have players that you have rated higher than where they're at, and they're sitting there and just kind of glaring you at you on the board, you got to go and pull the trigger and make those plays. Because like I said, you need guys that can come in and contribute year one with those first 3 picks.
I think we take our day 2 picks and trade up into the first round, grab a safety. That's what I think.
See?
By the way, I'm with Neil in terms of the value of the safety. I wish we had another second round pick so we can pick.
I mean, honestly, here's where I was with that. I felt that that round 3 pick should be potentially targeted at safety because we had nobody in the room that was reliable that could actually make plays. I've not looked at Dane Cruikshank nearly enough to feel comfortable about him, but what the very tiny little minute sample size that I've seen of him, I like what I see, and I think he's a good fit at strong safety. DHC got brought back, and he's sort of a steady Eddie type of dude that brings you a lot of special teams value, and so that's worth something there. So at least you have 3 bodies in the room. And so now I don't think that's necessarily as high of a priority. Like before, we didn't have anybody in the room that you could rely on to make plays. And so that's why I was thinking that that 3rd pick on day 2 could potentially be a safety target. And now I think that that's definitely going to be a round 5 pick.
What do you guys think? I've issued this invitation to people who watch this show. Send us your mock drafts, and Neil and Danny will comment on them. So I think we've almost have our first one here, and it's from Jordan. He says, "I'd love offensive linemen, wide receivers, and cornerbacks, linebackers, or DL in those first 3 picks." Let's take a quick look at the players that he's mentioned. Smith, who is that?
Tyler Smith from Tulsa, yeah.
Yeah, so you guys are in agreement that Tyler Smith would be a good 2nd or 3rd round.
Tyler Smith.
Yes, Tyler Smith would be a guy you can get at that pick 39 probably. He's a guy that can come in and compete at left tackle.
Right, and
again, you talk about position versatility. He's a guy that can easily compete at left tackle. Also, a guy that can move inside as well.
Right.
And then Sailor. This is isn't this Jamari Sailor?
He's not a guy for this system, in my opinion. He's more of a mauler. I think he's not a guy that has lateral agility to be able to move sideline to sideline. I think we'll touch on him later on in a couple of shows. But Sean Ryan from UCLA is definitely a guy that I like a lot. I think 39 might be too high for him, might be too rich for him. He's a guy that played left tackle at UCLA under Kelly. What's his former Philly Eagle coach? Chip Kelly. Thank you. So he's an athletic offensive lineman, play left tackle, has a length of an interior guard probably. So he's going to be shifted inside and guard. He's a guy I'm going to break down next week. Definitely like the kid, Sean Ryan from UCLA. If we're going to go through the rest of the list here, although, Pickens, we talked about, Alec Pierce talked about, Khalil Shakir I talked about. We like all those guys. I think Shakir, of those 2, Shakir might be too high at pick 48, because I'm assuming he's talking about pick 48 there with that second round pick. Pickens, you probably can drop down. This is a scenario here where if Pickens is a guy I think is going to slide a little bit, just because some off-field stuff coming off an injury as well. I think he's a guy that could slide down in middle to late portion of second round. We'll see how that goes. But Alec Pierce is a guy that's got explosiveness, guy that gives you some of that big play potential at receiver. He's definitely a guy you could target at pick 48. And we just talked about those cornerbacks. And McCreary, I love from Auburn, and then Kobe Bryant. Neil talked about him today from Cincinnati. So I'm assuming that's going to be pick 71 at that 3rd round. So these are definitely players that we've talked about and players that you could target. But yes, I agree. Offensive line, receiver, cornerback, in some kind of order is how it's going to go.
Yeah, if it's me, we talked about Tyler Smith. Love Tyler Smith. Position versatility, gives you a lot of options. Not a fan of Jamari Sawyer. He was a guy that I wanted to bring up early on in the show as a guy that was getting hyped up, him and his teammate, and guys that I think are way overhyped that would be way down the list for me. Ryan. We'll touch on Ryan next week. I'm probably not as high as you are, Danny, on Ryan, but we'll go more in depth with that. Pickens and Pierce are definite, high day 2 guys to me, and Shakir is probably a little bit further on down. I almost have him a early day 3 guy on my board, I think. McCreary is a late day 2 guy for me just because of the measurables. But again, like we talked about before, he's figured out a way to overcome all that stuff. And so that's really intriguing and enticing. And then I talked about Bryant. Linebacker, Troy Anderson, I talked about a couple shows ago. And that's the guy to me that you find on day 3, one of those guys with traits, developmental dudes that are not ready to play right now whatsoever. And I think the biggest knock for me on Anderson is that, he's got speed and explosiveness and all these things that you excel doing the Underwear Olympics with. But, what he doesn't have is play strength. He gets mauled on the field. He can't shake blocks. He can't he can't fight through traffic, and that's a big issue with me. But yeah, he's got some intriguing stuff, and I like to see what he looks like 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, going into his after his rookie contract, and see if he's actually found himself a spot. I don't think it's going to be with the Bears, but who knows? We'll see what happens. Travis Jones, we talked about as a big, strong, nasty interior guy.
I love Logan Hall and Travis Jones. I love those two guys.
Logan Hall, 3-tech, Drake Jackson. Yeah, so I mean, good names. I think some of those names are a little bit are definitely too rich for my blood in terms of Shakir and Anderson as day 2 guys, but then Sawyer and Ryan, I definitely wouldn't have on day 2. But some of those other guys we went at length about and very high on, and
right.
So I would not be upset about Tyler Smith and Alec Pierce in the second round. I'll just go ahead and tell you.
Or even if they go Smith and then go back with Logan Hall or Travis Jones with that second round pick, I'd address the offense and defensive line, and then in the third round, if you get whatever receivers left over, if it's a Shakir or if it's a McCurry in the third round at cornerback, I would do that as well, because we touched on receiver. You can probably get a receiver in the 4th round or 5th round. I guess you don't have a 4th round pick here, so this is where trading down could be of value for you here. But I think you get a receiver in day 3. I think you could possibly come in and get a day 3 corner. There's a corner that I want to kind of bring up here. I didn't list him on my clips here, but he's a guy that I've been studying the last couple of days that as a day 3 guy. I'm not sure if you've seen him, but he's a guy that I want to kind of bring up here and talk to him about him as well. So if we have time later on, maybe we could talk about him too. But yeah, I mean, there's different ways you can run this board, and see, you have to go off what they have in terms of how they value these players. But yeah, I mean, some of those names there, absolutely love Tyler Jones. Tyler Smith. Love Travis Jones. Love Logan Hall. Love McCreary. Love Alec Pierce. I mean, a lot of these guys that we've already talked about, like Neil said, and we like them a lot.
On the topic of Tyler Smith, I like his teammate too, Chris Paul. Yes. I like his teammate a lot as well.
Yeah, not day 2 though.
Not day 2. Yeah, but I mean, he's a guy that brings a lot to the table, and a guy that we keep talking about. This the word we keep talking about: aggressiveness, physicality. He's got a good
mid-range game too.
Yeah, he sure is.
And
great distributor.
Yeah,
I'm with Jordan on this. I've developed a crush for Logan Hall since you guys pointed it out to me weeks ago on one of our earlier shows. I've actually mocked him to the Bears in round 2. And I won't get into all the details, but he's that perfect 3-tech that could be available in round 2. And if he's there, man, are you going to pass him up?
I love the kid. And then what the funny thing is a lot of teams, there's a split here with what teams are seeing. Teams see him as a 4-3 in or a 5 technique in a 3-4 defense. Mm-hmm. And some teams see him as possibly as an interior defensive lineman. I see him as an interior defensive lineman, or could play the interior defensive line here as a 3 technique. And when I broke him down, talked about his ability, his get off at the snap, at 6'6" frame, good length, his get off, his ability to penetrate the gaps and get into the backfield and make plays. He's got a solid spin move in terms of a pass rush. He's not there yet in terms of as a pass rusher, a guy who can probably develop that game better, can be coached up there. But definitely a guy that can be an interior presence, an interior disruptor, if you will. And just the way for that big a size, his 10-yard split, guys, I keep saying this, it was a 1.68 at the combine. Aaron Donald was 1.63. So he's not that far off from Aaron Donald in terms of his get off at the snap. And you see it on tape. That translate on tape with this kid, and that length, the size. And Aldo, when I broke him down, I said, even if he doesn't get to the pass rusher, even if it doesn't get to the quarterback with his pass rush, his 6'6" frames, put those arms up, you can be able to block that passing lane, maybe tap some, bat some balls at the line of scrimmage, create turnovers, stuff like that. He can help you in so many different ways, So that's the thing is, like, I absolutely love Logan Hall. And I think if one of those two, him or Travis Jones, are available with those 2nd round picks, you got to address the defense line still.
I just got from Scox his mock draft, one of his favorites, he says. And I know that Danny and Neil are going to poo-poo that first pick, Bernard Rainman, because you did it when Damian Parsons was on the show. Well,
it's not that I'm going to poo-poo it. I like Raymond as a prospect. I just have some doubts in terms of his, being a starter day 1, right? The 39th pick, I want him. He's going to be a left tackle, and he's being touted as possibly a late 1st round pick. And And I see why. He's got the size at 6'6". He's only 303 pounds, though. So remember, this guy's only played left tackle for 2 years, guys. He was a tight end before, right? And he's played at Western Michigan. So he's not a guy that's really played at a big-time conference, has been going up against big-time competition. His arm length, to me, is guard length, right? And I'm a big proponent about arm length. It's got to be 33 and a half or higher in terms of my offensive tackles on the outside, on the islands, right? I'm very strong about that. I know there are tackles that have had a sub 33-inch arm length, but those are the exceptions, not the rules. Those are, you probably count on a single hand, in terms of guys that succeeded at tackle with sub 33 arm length. So, athletic ability is there. He's more of a developmental guy. He's a guy that when Damian brought him up, I said, this is one of the guys that, sure, I'll let him go out there and I'll let him fail at left tackle before I move him into guard, no doubt about it. But I see him more. I see his career probably blossoming more inside at guard than I do at left tackle. I mean, I put on this tape, this is a kid that was built up as an athletic, offensive lineman, but you see him get to a second level, you see him struggle, to reach some of those second level linebackers. You see him struggle to be able to maintain and sustain those blocks on those second level linebackers. So, I mean, that's the thing that concerns me about Raymond is he's a guy that intrigues me. He's a guy that I can bring in this roster. If I sign, for example, a Dwayne Brown, a veteran that's going to come in and start for the next year or two, and I have Raymond developing behind him, sure, not a problem. But at pick 39, I want a guy that's going to be a sure starter for me if I don't have a veteran left tackle. Christian Watson.
Hey, Dan, if I can interrupt you just real quick there with Raymond, I think a lot of his evaluation could probably be like centered on those pass pro clips from Senior Bowl when he couldn't take on any of those edge rushers. He couldn't set, he couldn't anchor, he couldn't move bodies. He got absolutely eaten alive during Senior Bowl week in terms of just those pass rush drills. And I know it's slanted towards the defensive lineman anyways, but like we talked about with Zion Johnson was able to grab a guy, use heavy hands, could control the body and anchor and move side to side. Bernard Raymond couldn't do any of that. And so in terms of his type of rawness, like, yeah, if you like all those types of traits, I think he's a luxury for teams that are luxurious teams that have starters already. Like you said, they can bring in this type of kid that has all these traits and all these measurables and all this upside and everything else and mold them into something. But, for us, we need a guy to come in right away and pick 39 Bernard Raymond. To me, ain't it?
Let me tell you about Christian Watson. I keep seeing Christian Watson.
He's gonna be gone first round.
Yeah. I mean, Greg Gabriel has assured me that he is going to be taken in the first round. There's no way that the Chiefs with 2 picks in the first round and the Packers with 2 picks in the first round are going to bypass this guy. He's going to go to one of those 2 teams.
Yeah, Christian Watson, unfortunately, is not going to be available, guys. That's what I've heard as well. I think that's last week. I said I don't think his team calls are going to change. I think the Packers are smitten with him, and I think that's if he's there for them, that I think they'll go ahead and they may even have to move up to get him. Who knows? We'll see what happens. But I think he's
if he's available in the second round for the Bears, just like don't even bother waiting. Just mail the pick and right away.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing is like, with Watson, if it's not Watson, there are going to be other receivers going to be available there as well. So it's a deep position group, a position of need. And, here, I forgot who had this draft here, but, they're Skokes. Okay. So Scott's got 2 receivers here. You got Romeo Doubs, who's a big kid out of Nevada. He's got that straight line speed, and he's got Christian Watson here. So, I could see the Bears going with 2 receivers because they need playmakers at that position too. So, Alontae Taylor, a guy we talked about today, 3rd round, if he's there at 71, I think that's a good pickup. Cam Jurgens for me is a center. Really a guy that when I watch his tape, it doesn't really impress me that much. I know he's athletic as heck, but again, a guy that can probably bring in here and develop. But again, if you have the kid from Green Bay starting at center, I don't know what you have Jurgens here at center for you. So I'd rather probably use that pick maybe on more of an interior offensive lineman than I would.
He already had Mustipher as a backup as well.
Exactly. So, if Vernon McKinley's at 186, that'd be a heck of a pick there. I think he's a kid that can play some safety in the NFL. So, there's some nice names here. I got that. I don't see get picked for the Bears, and I'm not sure why. Neil, maybe you can tell me why. Is that Nick Petit-Frere from Ohio State? I think that kid can play left tackle. Is he fully developed? No. Does he need some time? Maybe yes, but I think he athletic. He can play left tackle. I think he's played more snaps at left tackle than a kid like Raymond. So I just don't see why there's an intrigue and an infatuation, if you will, with a kid like Raymond, who's only played for 2 years there, but a kid like Petit Ferrer, who's proven in a Big Ten to be an elite left tackle. You see him spring out of his stance. You see him get to that second level run fit. Maybe that game against Michigan really kind of ruined it for him. But I just don't see why that kid doesn't get enough love or attention in that second round range for the Bears.
Because Raymond's the 7-foot Lithuanian that can shoot and drain threes from the perimeter and has a grainy tape. That's why you fall in love with the novelty. That's entirely why. And I think Petit Frere is more ready than Bernard Raymond is. I completely agree with you. I think Nick Petit Frere is incredibly undervalued right now. And I think he's a guy that's going to fall and is going to fall right into our lap.
Gabriel loves him a lot. Yeah.
Nicholas Petit Frere. Yeah. I think he could. I think obviously he's not fully developed. Yeah, he still needs some work, but I think you could go out next year and start him at left tackle. I wouldn't be that concerned with him. Is he going to take his lumps? Is he going to take his bumps? Sure. He's a rookie left tackle. It's going to happen. But I think he's a guy that potentially could be your starter down the road. Raymond, possibly, maybe, but just there are too many question marks for me to go out and put pick 39 on a kid like Raymond.
Cam Jurgens is a center only. He's a one-trick pony.
Yeah.
His measurables are way too tiny to play anything but center. And again, I love what he did at the combine. He absolutely tore it up, and the media was fawning over him, and all those things. It was kind of disgusting to watch, but but the way that he, you got to give the kid credit. The way that he moved and ran and jumped and as athletic as the day is long. But again, when you talk about guys that are one-trick ponies, and then the type of pony that we don't need right now, there's really no need for him on our roster.
Right. Exactly.
Oh, boy, this has been fun, guys. By the way,
can I get to my corner, my day 3 corner that I want to kind of bring up?
Yeah.
So, Neil, have you Have you watched Jack Jones from ASU?
I have not.
Okay. I put this kid's tape on, and again, another guy that the more I watch, the more I like. Right? He's an undersized, not undersized. He's 5'11", 171 pounds, so he's got a slender, thin frame. 30 3/4 arm length. Ran a 4.5 140. So again, we're talking about a guy that doesn't have that elite, speed like we talked with some other guys here. But again, just a quick twitched athlete, a guy who possesses that, those quick feet, the good lateral agility, the stop and start, change of direction ability, smooth back pedal, with that plant and drive ability, a guy that's, feisty, a guy we talked about, he's only 171, dripping wet, but he will come down, he'll hit you. He's a guy that wraps up and tackles. Again, feisty, competitive, small corner. He's a guy that can track the ball and go up and make a play on it. That's because he's necessarily not the biggest guy. Doesn't mean he won't go up and make a play on a football. So, really like this guy, lightning quick out of his transition. You saw him, smooth out his back pedal, plant and drive on a guy underneath route. You really, really like him. The thing about him, and this guy coming out of high school, remember, 5-star recruit out of high school. All right. We went to teams like Alabama, ASU, Texas, A&M, UCLA, all going after him, and he ended up going to USC. There was an issue in terms of academics. He had to sit out a year and all that stuff. And then there's some off the field stuff at ASU where he was suspended and some off the field trouble. So there's some red flags there. So that's why I think this guy could drop down into day 3. But definitely a guy that intrigues me at 5'11", with that twitchiness, that ability to play some off-man coverage, and he's sticky as heck in coverage. You can get onto a guy, and he'll stay in his hip pocket downfield. Look at his play here: body control, contours, makes a nice play on a bigger receiver. That's Romney from BYU. Bigger receiver goes up, stays with them in phase, body control, makes a nice play on interception. So Jack Jones is a guy. We talk about guys' traits, guys that can make plays, guys that intrigue you, right? Day 3 guy. This is the guy. The reason he probably would drop is probably because of his off the field stuff. You guys, kind of look into that and make sure it's, that all checks out. But definitely a guy that intrigues me. And again, guy was coached by Antonio Pierce, a former NFL, linebacker, and also his head coach, Herm Edwards, NFL head coach. So, he's got some of that NFL coaching already in him. So a guy that can come in as a day 3 pick and maybe contribute right away. Jack Jones from ASU, guys, keep an eye on this name.
I have to imagine the off-the-field stuff wasn't that big of a deal because we know Herm Edwards is a no-nonsense type of guy. If it was that
I read
heavy.
into it, and it's I don't want to bring it up here, but it's some big. He broke in some burglary stuff and all that stuff. So there are some stuff that they got to check out.
Prior to being in college, or
no, at ASU. So he had academic issues at USC, which he had to sit out. He went to Jesus, I can't think of the name. college. Community college. He went to community college for a year at 2018 because he was suspended. He was ineligible at USC. Went to community college there. Moorpark College, and then he ended up going to ASU because of Antonio Pierce and all that stuff. And then he got suspended there. So there's some stuff they look into. But you talk about a guy that can drop into day 3, potentially come in with that quick twitch fiber ability, that stickiness in coverage. We talked about, you just showed him right there, his ball skills there, 26 pass defense, 5 forced fumbles. So this is a guy, again, you see him running towards a ball carrier with that clenched fist, looking to go ahead and knock that ball out. So these are things that you look for. But again, he's got to check out in terms of off the field, but definitely got to keep an eye on day 3.
Yeah, Moorpark isn't one of those destination junior colleges either. They might as well have gone and stuck him on a deserted island somewhere.
So here's what Brugler says about his.
Just anecdotally.
Sorry
What's
to interrupt.
that?
Sorry to interrupt, but here's what Brugler writes about some of his problems here. He left USC because of academics in 2018. He was arrested for allegedly breaking into a Panda Express in June of 2018. Of all places, right? He was hungry. The felony.
Their own chicken was tempting, man.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's good. The felony charges were later dropped, and he pleaded guilty to a 2nd-degree misdemeanor charge of commercial burglary, serving 45 days of house arrest. He was suspended by Arizona State coaching staff for fighting during practice in November of 2020 and missed most of the abbreviated 4-game season in 2020. His lack of, he just goes on to talk about some of his skills here, but his summary line is, overall, his lack of size and discipline on and off the field creates doubt about his next level future, but his short agility skills, ball instincts, and compete skills are already NFL entry traits. So kind of a mixed bag there. 7th round is where he projects him to go. But I agree with you, Danny. This is a guy you want to bring in, and you want to have that talk. And then you also want to see who's in your locker room and can take this young man under his wing. Give him life advice, give him counsel, and so forth. We got to find out. Brugler does a nice job of looking into the guy's background. He talks about high school and so forth. So you want to ask him questions. If he came from a very poor background and didn't have the parental skills that so many of us are blessed with, and those are things that perhaps you need to take into account. But right now, it's an iffy proposition for him.
Right, but these are the guys that can drop because of stuff like this. That then you can in 3-4 years, like, man, how did this kid last to the 5th round, for example, right? Stories like this, stuff like that could happen to you, and then you could, eventually, if you could turn your life around and you could be, a successful player. I just think his athletic ability, his coverage awareness, and the way he can make plays on a football, it really, really intrigues me. Like I said, when I watch his tape, I couldn't keep my eyes off of the kid. So the kid is electric. Again, doesn't have the prototypical size you want necessarily in terms of 171 pounds. So he might be kind of, pushed inside to a slot corner. We'll see how that goes, but definitely a guy, if he checks out off the field, I think it's well worth taking a chance on him.
The thing about this too, guys, is the best thing that he can do is be 100% honest and transparent about everything that happened. Yep. Because during the character process, but in August, all these scouts come in and they know well ahead of time that this kid has some baggage. They're going to ask questions. The guys like me who sat down with these guys and gave the character reports, they're going to sit down with, so did I, know that. Let's go ahead and be honest. So did all 3 of us probably. But they're going to sit down with his position coach. They're going to sit down with the head coach. They're going to sit down with the strength coach and really take the deepest dive they possibly can. Basically, do a background check and talk to as many people as possible about this kid. Who he is on and off the field, how he performs. When he's inside, how he performs when nobody's looking. All these different types of things. By the time you get to December, everything you need to know, so that when you go into these off-season these off-season events, you get the kid into the room, the interview process, they already know the answers to the questions, right? And so really a lot of the times when they ask these questions, it's all about, is the kid going to bullshit us, or is he going to be real and honest and authentic and own it, right? And so, the best thing with all these kids can do is just, own his bullshit. I've grown up since then, and here's where I am now, and here's how I can help you. And I think that's the biggest thing for all of our listeners to realize is that once we get to this point, all the answers are already had. It's just a matter of the kid being a man about it effectively. Does that make sense?
Sure does. I love what Mule says here is, what's your GPA? What's that? Interview over. All right. Hey, by the way, since you were looking at that Arizona State, Danny, what'd you think of Chase Lucas, who Cox also said he's intrigued by?
I was doing Jack Jones. Lucas is next on my hit list.
All right, we'll take a look at him. He's actually evaluated much higher by Dane Brugler in his publication, The Beast, and we thank Chase Brugler for doing outstanding work. We'll be quoting some of that from time to time and have the guys. I love it when you guys disagree with Dane Brugler, because that's real. And I love it when you guys disagree. Go ahead and fight more often on this show. I love conflict.
The only thing about Chase Lucas I can say is when I'm watching Jack Jones, no one else stuck out to me on defense. So that's the one thing is I'm watching this kid and no one else is really doing anything other than that. Now, for example, I was watching another kid, Kalen Barnes from Baylor, and I couldn't get my eyes off of Jalen Petrie, the safety. I absolutely am developing a low man crush there on Jalen Petrie. And I just think that, if he's somehow, I don't know how you can get him on his roster. Again, you have to use a second round pick or possibly, I'm thinking he's going in the second round somewhere. So I just don't know. I don't feel confident. I shouldn't say I don't feel confident. I love the kid. I love is the way he plays. I just don't know how the Bears could use a second round pick on a safety right now when they have so many other needs. That's my only thing. And so,
I agree with you, Danny. I've fallen in love with him too. And it's like weird. In one of my mocks, I had him and Josh Logan Hall, excuse me, in my second round. And it was like, oh, man, if I were to publish this on Twitter, I'd get killed.
Just because of the needs, right? Now, if they have things going on in the background that we don't know about, right? If they have things that our veterans have targeted, for example, I keep mentioning Dwayne Brown, right? If for example, if he's someone that they've targeted and they've spoken to him and they kind of have an idea, hey, if we don't get a tackle here and we go get a Petrie, we go get a Logan Hall, we go get something else, can we go bring in Dwayne Brown after the draft and sign him? Then it makes sense, right? But if you go in with left tackle Tevin Jenkins or Larry Borum, and you're putting Justin Fields back there, I'm going to be freaking losing my mind, because I think that's just asking for disaster here.
Let the record show Danny just said he'd take a safety in round 2.
I said I could not. I could not put the card in for a safety in the second round. But I love the player. Jalen Petrie. I just can't, with all the needs, I cannot give him my card in with a safety on the second round.
Here's another guy that I have fallen in love with, the cornerback out of what school is he? Here it is, Florida. Kair.
Oh, no,
you don't like him?
He's got the prototypical size and quickness for a cornerback, but his run defense is nowhere near to what you want as a especially in a cover 2 defense. He's just a guy that's too hit or miss. Too grabby, and when he gets beaten off the line of scrimmage, you see him just kind of wrapping wrapping around the waist. I'm not a fan of. I mean, he's going to go in the first round. I mean, I'm not saying that. Yeah, he's going to go in the first round. It's just that I'm not that high on this kid.
What do you think, Neil? Help me out here.
What do you say?
He did the same.
I just use one word evaluation. Same.
It's just, I mean, I don't know what it is about it. I mean, like I said, he's got the size, the quickness, the speed, the twitch you want in a cornerback, but just he doesn't fulfill what I want in my cornerbacks for me. And for me, this kid is like a boomer bust pick. This guy could either be an NFL All-Pro or he's going to be out of the league within 4 years. So it's one of those, and if you're Ryan Poles, if this kid drops to you in the second round, you got to question yourself why he's there in the second round.
Yeah.
Well, and that's where Brugler has him going in the second round. He says overall, he's a good-sized athlete with natural cover talent and NFL-ready intangibles. With his physicality for press man, he compares favorably to Tampa Bay's Carlton Davis, who was when he was coming out of Auburn.
Maybe in a press man, yeah. If you go on like a system like, for example, that whatchamacallit runs. Tal Bowles, yeah, I mean, he's got, like I said, the quickness, the size, to be able to play some press man coverage. But if you're going to be running what Eberflus is going to be running, which is more of that off man coverage, and some of that's you need some of that coverage awareness. You need to be able to break quickly on a football and be physical in terms of being able to wrap up and tackle. We just touched on all these guys here, some of the physicality they brought in terms of run defense and all that stuff. He just doesn't bring it to me.
Jordan says, Danny, go watch Elam on Jameson.
I saw that. I saw him on Jameson. I saw him grabbing Jameson. I saw no penalties being called. I saw John Mechie cross him up and get a ball that was thrown behind him. If it wasn't thrown behind him, it was thrown in front of him, he'll probably caught it and score a touchdown on Elam. He doesn't impress me, guys. Ravi says he's stuck with Kyler Gordon or Emerson. They fit the cover 2 Eberflus scheme the best. The guy I like. My top corner is obviously Sauce Gardner and then McDuffie from Washington. I absolutely love Trent McDuffie from Washington. Those guys are both way ahead of Elam for me. Who I have seen go in first rounds, McDuffie. I keep seeing him over and over and over again going in the first round, which I was a little surprised, but I guess the hype is real. He's a damn good player.
Absolutely. Derek Stingley's another one that I really, really like out of LSU. I really like the high school.
His only question was just durability. Like, was he just kind of cashing it in, because he just wants to get through the season? But no, there was times where he wasn't available. And that's the only problem with him.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Jordan says, if he's not trying, if you're not cheating, you're not trying if you're not cheating. All right, guys, it is time to call it a night. Boy, a nice 2-hour and 10-minute show. I like it, man. I like it. And thanks, guys, for agreeing to come on Friday. I just could not go yesterday, and I apologize to anybody who was waiting in the YouTube channel or waiting wherever for the show, but I just couldn't go last night, and you guys brought it tonight. So thank you both very much, not only for changing the dates, but for all the hard work that you guys do in preparing for this show. Outstanding work. Neil, I'll start with you with any shout outs or any closing thoughts.
Yeah, nothing really to shout out outside of, again, like every week, like you guys come up in the chat, ask some great questions, have some great comments. We do this stuff so that, you guys have some intelligence to take back to your guys when you're getting hammered at the bar, right? No, but really appreciate everybody that comes on the show, man. Obviously, every single week we say this, like it, share it, love it, comment on it, do what you got to do. And, if somebody's looking for a great show, make sure they know that we exist. But always a great time to come on with you guys. And we'll see you next week.
Mr. Shimon.
Yeah, for me, again, fun, awesome show. I love the participation from our listeners. Guys that are deep into the draft process, guys that watch tape. It's obvious, and I love that back and forth. And just keep bringing it, keep giving us names you guys want us to look up, and you guys want us to break down. Next week, I'm going to be diving deeply into the interior offensive line positions. So we're looking at guards, predominantly guards. I'll look at a couple of centers, but predominantly guards is what I'm going to be concentrating on next week. So, because I think that's going to be a neat position, possibly they can probably attract maybe later on in the draft. So we'll see how it goes there. So look for interior offensive lineman next week.
Speaking of which, guys asking questions about players, Isaiah Weston from Northern Iowa, somebody asked about, and that's a guy that we'll cover next week as well. I had him on the list for this week, but we just stuck with corners to keep it, consistent. We'll dive into Isaiah Weston next week a little bit.
We should probably do
asked about him, but
we could probably do a show on just day 3 receivers, Neil. I mean, that's how many day 3 receivers there are in this show.
Though. We're going to run out of time though.
We're going to just do a day 3 receiver. That's it. We can go. Yeah. I mean, exactly.
Look what Scott says. He says he would pay to have this show on 3 times a week. We need to monetize our efforts here because you guys work way too hard for me to pay you nothing. And I apologize for laughing at that, but that's the truth.
Scott, how much would you pay?
That's right, Scott. What do you think it would be worth to have this show on 2 times, 3 times a week? What is that worth? So we'll wait your response, and I will also say this.
My girlfriend would have my ass.
I know, right? You're working 3 days a week for how much? Greg Gabriel is also going to look at cornerbacks on Monday at 1 p.m. Central. So I might roll some of the videotape from today's discussion for Greg to reply to. So I'll have some handy, but that's going to be a great show. So by the end of the day, Monday, really, we still have more cornerbacks to look at on this show. But boy, when it comes to offensive linemen, cornerbacks, and wide receivers, we got you covered. What was it, Neil, that you said? You had a buzzword on draft on demand.
Yeah, draft on demand.
I love
draft on demand.
I love it. It's Draft on Demand, guys, right here at the Barroom Network. I'm going to organize all of our shows so that you can easily find all of our draft shows. And if I have time, I would love to edit together all of the evaluations from Danny, Neil, and Greg and put them into one long YouTube show so that people could go to that as a reference. It would be our own beast. How about that? That would be pretty cool. I just need to find the time to do that. And because time is running out, right? Isn't it? Let's look at the countdown.
3 weeks away, man.
See where we're at.
19 days and I mean, how many hours?
Oh man, look at that. 19 days.
Oh, there it is, the countdown.
Man.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm anxious for the draft to come, but at the same time, I want to be talking about it. I'm sort of like Scott, 'cause I wish I could be talking about it every day of the week because there's so many interesting players and so many different scenarios that we can run through. The speculation is fun, but overall, it's discussing this topic with guys who do the work, and that's what you two guys do, and I'm highly indebted to you for that. So for Neil Stopchinski and Danny Shimon, this is Draft on Tap. We'll see you next week.